What's the
But
longest you've spent, like, over time on a climbing problem or?
I think probably like a year and a half.
Welcome to the Endurance Studio podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Turner. I'm an avid ultra-endurance cyclist, bikepacker, and runner, and I'm on a journey to learn and share everything I can about how people can push beyond their limits. This podcast will explore all aspects of endurance through conversations with people I find unique and interesting. There's always an amazing story of accomplishment and failure, and always something to learn. I run this podcast from an off-grid mobile studio I've created so I can travel to the guests and have authentic, in-person conversations because I believe in the importance and power of face-to-face conversations. Thank you for watching and listening. This episode is brought to you by Squirrel's Nut Butter. Who doesn't need a little extra lube in their life? They make adventure lube. It's the best in the business. I use the saddle butter for riding and the anti-chafe for ultra running. It's all natural ingredients, sustainable packaging, and it's locally manufactured here in Flagstaff, Arizona. And go check out episode number 4 with Chris Thornley. He's the owner and operator of Squirrel's Nut Butter. He's an amazing human, and he's got some really great stories on that podcast. So check him out. You can use my unique promo code, Endurance15, for 15% off any of their products online at squirrelsnutbutter.com, or you can click the link in the description and it will automatically be applied to your shopping cart. So please use that code. Go buy from them. Let them know that their support of this podcast is paying off for them, and spread that lube love. squirrelsnutbutter.com. I wanted to let you know a few different ways that you can support this podcast. Of course, you can like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Tell other people about it. Tell your friends and family. If you think these conversations I'm having are valuable as I think they are, share it, send it out, ask them to subscribe. That would be amazing. That's a free way that you can support. Another way you can support is by financially support is by becoming a member on either YouTube or Spotify. Those links are always in the description of all the videos. And YouTube members do get some extra perks like member shoutouts during the podcast, priority reply to comments, and best of all, you get early access to new videos that I'm releasing. You can also, if you don't want to sign up for a recurring membership, you can also show me your support by sending a one-time gift using what YouTube calls the Super Thanks feature. So when you're watching a video, down at the bottom, there's the little buttons, the thumbs up, thumbs down button. And right next to that, there is a heart with a little dollar sign in the middle, and it says thanks next to it. That is the Super Thanks button. So if you click that, it'll allow you to give a one-time gift, financial gift of your choice. And it's just incredible. Like seeing the support that I've gotten so far from both members and from Super Thanks is just amazing, and it is definitely allowing me to keep this thing rolling down the tracks. And a quick shout out to my newest YouTube member, Cindercat. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member and supporting the podcast. Today's episode features Nico Francis, a veteran climber, backpacker, and outdoors person who is new to the bikepacking world. Nico reached out to me through a mutual friend with a bunch of bikepacking related questions. So I thought, let's turn this into sort of a Q&A podcast and capture it so everyone can benefit. So if you're a new bikepacker or just getting into bikepacking, or even if you're a veteran bikepacker, maybe there's some information here you can glean as well. But if you're new to bikepacking, this is definitely the episode for you to watch. So I hope you enjoy this bikepacking Q&A with Nico Francis. So you were in Yosemite for climbing?
I was there for like some pride events.
Okay.
So one of my friends is a park ranger there, and she was on the pride planning committee. And they had like a speaker series, so she asked if I wanted to be one of the speakers, and I said yes before I could think better of it. And
Yeah.
then I was like, all right, well, shit, we're going to Yosemite. But it was awesome. It was such a cool experience, and it was just like great to get to spend time with like a bunch of queer outdoors people. And yeah, I did do some climbing. I did a little bit of bouldering, but it was really hot, so it was like greasy. It was just grease fest.
Oh, really?
And
What is a grease vest? I don't know.
Oh, it's just like when the holds feel slippery because it's hot.
Okay.
And so you're just like, yeah, they just between the shoe rubber and oil, like the oil from your skin and all of that, you're just like sliding off of stuff.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's probably like a little bit. I'm just doing a sound check also.
Yeah, you're good.
That's probably a little bit disconcerting.
Yeah,
A
I mean,
grease
it's
vest?
yeah, you know, it's just part of summer. I mean, we did we went up to Tuolumne and did like a multi-pitch, which was fun. Like climbed up Cathedral Peak.
I don't know
And
I
then
don't know anything about climbing. Just
yeah,
what
that's
is a
fine.
multi-pitch?
So multi-pitch is just when it's like whatever you're climbing is longer than the length of a single rope. So you climb partway up it, and then you have to set up another belay station before you can continue climbing.
Okay.
Because you just like run out of rope.
Right.
So yeah.
Interesting.
And then like each section, from one belay station to the next is called a pitch.
Okay.
And then you typically will like kind of swap whoever's leading on each pitch. So
how did you get into climbing?
My family, like my mom specifically, was a climber and still is. So I was like climbing when I was really little. Like we would go to Joshua Tree for Thanksgiving and climb. And,
Oh, that's so cool.
and then I stopped for a while. I was like, just wasn't into it. And then started again like in middle school, and have been like full on into it since. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I love it. It's just like such a unique way to move your body, and like such a unique challenge, and I love the problem solving, and yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much, like, I've done it twice.
Mm-hmm.
Once at a climbing gym more recently, and then once when I was a lot younger with my dad. And the one thing I saw that I could get easily addicted to or hooked by that ported over from bikepacking was like the down and dirty details of the small little technical things of everything. Yep. From gear to even like the rating system on the walls. Is just so interesting, and it's not like it's all precision. Everything is like precision. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And it's an art like blended with precision is what I noticed. And I could like easily like spend a fortune on climbing shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, I already spent kind of a little fortune on bikepacking shit, so I don't know if I can do both.
Yeah, I've mostly been doing bouldering lately, so that's been like lately I've really been enjoying like either super easy trad climbing, or which is like more of like a gear challenge of like, okay, like how do I place gear to protect it, like to protect the climbing, and like very hard bouldering, which I've gotten like super hooked on just because it's like the little details of like what makes something like climbable are like so small with bouldering. It's like, oh yeah, like I turned my hip like a fraction of a degree and all of a sudden I can do the move. And if I don't do that, then the move feels impossible. And like working through that process of like figuring out like what makes a sequence work, or like refining it and like getting it just like drilled into your brain is really cool. Yeah. So I've really been enjoying that.
Nice. Yeah. So going back really quick to your childhood, I read that you grew up in a bit of a unique scenario in an adobe house that was like off grid somewhere outside of Flagstaff. Yeah. Was that like off grid like solar panels, or was it off grid like no running water?
It was like full off grid. Like we hauled our own water and we had like a water tank. So we had running water.
Right. So you had,
but we were hauling it and like had a tank that, that we would store it in.
Right. And a pump that was run by either a generator or solar maybe or something. Yep.
Yeah. We had like a solar system and then like a generator as like backup. Like if it was like cloudy for a while, sometimes we'd have to run the generator. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. And it's out past like Sunset Crater.
Okay. So, how was that in the winters? What'd you do for heat? Like wood stove? And
we had a wood stove. And I mean, the adobe house, like once it heated up, it was like super warm.
Kept everything in.
The only thing was like the one thing that I'm like, oh, it's like nice to like not have the like stove be the source of heat anymore, is that if you were like away all day or like for a trip and the house had like cooled off, you would come home and the house would be really cold. Like have to start a fire and it would take like several hours for it to, warm up.
Yeah. And then
to
it
get
would
all
be
that.
100,000 degrees in there.
Yeah.
And everybody, you'd be opening windows.
It wouldn't get quite that hot. I mean, but
They had
yeah,
all,
it was
your
definitely.
family had it figured out by then.
Yeah.
I just remember my dad, like, he'd be like, it's cold, and he'd start a fire, and then
And be
like
like,
15 minutes later, it was
yeah,
like an oven
boiling.
inside.
You're like, oh, great.
And he'd be like, oh, I'm hot.
Yeah.
You know? I remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's interesting because I had a friend who in high school who there's a town called Arivaca.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard of Arivaca?
I know the name. I have no idea where it is.
Okay, it's south of Tucson to the west. So I grew up halfway between Tucson and Nogales.
Okay.
So very close to the Mexican border.
Yeah.
And Arivaca is like a small little. It was kind of like a hippie community in the 70s. And this is to the west of Nogales. So it did have a little bit of the typical border issues that all of those border towns face, but it was a little bit more off the path, so it didn't have as much. And it was in the 70s, it was like there was a bakery down there, and you could like go and get, this was before like cannabis was legal. You could go and get like special brownies in the back, you know? And it was just that kind of community. It was like a very eclectic, artsy community, kind of like what Patagonia is now. The town of Patagonia has become like this very artsy gateway community for the Arizona Trail. And anyway, I had a friend that I went to high school with that lived in a converted cave. Their house was a converted cave down in Arivaca.
That's cool.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
They were just, Jeremy and Autumn were their names. They were like kind of the children of hippies. And so it was a very unique experience for them growing up, in that. I wish I could have asked more questions at that time. It was just kind of like a novelty for us all at that time. You know what I mean? High school, like whatever. Stupid high school kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now I'm like, what was that really like, And was it like, how converted was it? What kind of utilities did you have? I mean, they were just like normal. So I'm assuming it was like a fully converted cave,
Yeah. So
interesting.
Yeah.
You have any siblings?
I don't. It's just me.
Yeah. Nice. So anyway.
Yeah.
Bikepacking.
Yeah.
So you think that you went on one trip, right? So far that I know.
I've done two.
What was you did the Stagecoach or the Arizona Trail from Tucson to Flagstaff?
We went from actually Red Mountain-ish to the South Rim. We were going to go from like Schultz, but there was still snow on the trails.
Right.
And also the weather was like shit for our third day, so we just kind of like shifted stuff around.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, and that was like super fun. So that was my first trip. And then the last trip I did was another section of the AZT from North Kaibab to State Line.
Oh.
So that was like, yeah.
On the north half.
Just breaking your table here.
Yeah, it's cool. You can knock it over. They're durable. Yeah, that's that one from North Kaibab to State Line. So that's a hard one to access.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hike up there.
Yeah.
And I'd done all of those sections as like day bikes.
Okay.
With a friend last fall, because she had been finishing up. She'd done like all the sections of the AZT, and those were the last bits that she had to do. So that's why I was like stoked to do it. I was like, Chris, we should do this. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was great. It's such a beautiful area. There's a ton of water up there. There were a lot of fallen trees.
Yeah.
That was fun.
When was this?
Second week of May.
Of this year?
I think there was some storm that went through because like close to North Kaibab, there were a ton of like our fallen tree to mile ratio is 1-to-1 for like the first like 35 miles.
Whoa.
Of like having to lift it over the trees or
right.
whatever, like seriously go around. But it was fun, adds a little excitement.
Yeah, that's part of bikepacking too, is the variety of terrain conditions. Like it's never going to be, very rarely is it perfect. Like our conditions perfect, right? And I mean, there's been some Arizona Trail races where people have done the 800 and they've had to go over 500 plus down trees. And this is at the end
Yeah.
of whatever, 700 miles plus the canyon portage.
Yeah.
And then they're doing all the trees.
Yeah.
Like,
that's a lot.
Relentless, just pounding on your body.
Yeah.
You know? And it's incredible. Some of the people, I haven't done the 800. I've done the 300. I have the 800 like on my definitely bucket list.
Yeah.
I scratched it. I started it and scratched it.
I think Chris told me that you had like an injury, right? You like.
Yeah. Well, it was a combination of things. Because we met first before that at Cotulla.
Yep. Yeah. I think you were getting ready to like do it.
I was.
Yep.
So, yeah, I crashed really bad. I went in with an existing rib injury. So I was doing a 100-mile endurance race, the Stagecoach 100, from Flag to Tucson, like a fast-paced, no-gear endurance race with aid stations, you know, like pinning the miles. And I crashed really bad coming down Missouri Bill Hill. I don't know if you know the one.
I remember it, yeah.
It's just this like chunk down with all these just like ruts and I don't know. I should have been going slower. I blame it on the front tire I was using. It was a recon race. Should have been a recon. I've had bad experiences with running recon races on the front. Just so for some reason I wash out on them.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I run a recon race on the back and a recon on the front, and that seems to be the magic combination for me. But for some reason I was running it on the front. I got cheap or something, and I was like, I have an extra one, and I'm going to put this on. And so I crashed bad, and I had a rib injury, and I got to Boundary Aid Station, and I couldn't really take I absolutely couldn't take full breaths in. And I was like, I think maybe if something serious was wrong, I probably would have known by now. Like if I would have punctured something, or if the rib would have been broken. And I asked for a medic, and they were like, we don't really have medics here at this station. But you got to make a call on what you're going to do. And I was like, all right, I'll just keep going. If it was serious, it would have been serious by now, because this was like 2 hours later, Yeah. And so I kept going, finished it out. I toughed it out like a dumbass and got to the end and felt cool. And then, as rib injuries do, it just like persisted and persisted and persisted, and I avoided it. And I knew I had the Arizona Trail Race coming up, and I was like, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And then I started the 800, and I got really sick the first day. So like stomach problems, like I was having to pull over to go off trail to go poop, like I was having just like digestive issues.
Oh man.
Yeah, the conditions were not great, as far as it was a very tall grass year. The monsoons were intense that year, and the grass was really, really tall. That I could have dealt with, but it was like there was multiple components. And then there's this black pipe that probably anyone who's ridden that first part knows about. And it kind of crisscrosses the trail, and it was at an angle. Like it wasn't perpendicular to the trail. It was kind of at this weird angle, And I was going too fast. I was going fast, and I didn't hit it like I should have, like bank into it so I could hit it straight on. And I hit it, tire slid out, and I just went down on the exact same rib. Yeah, the water thing. You got to learn how to navigate it. Yeah.
We're doing great.
So I slid out on this pipe and just went down on the same rib side, and I was wrecked. And I decided, like, the whole thing I should have waited on.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't good. The whole thing was not good. So I decided, you know what? I don't know. Let's live to fight another day. I have family that's in Tucson, so I bailed out there. And I said, I'll go back another day. The other thing that kind of got to me mentally was how overwhelming the time commitment was going to be. And I didn't do a very good job of like chunking out in my head. Just get to this spot. Just get to this spot.
Yeah.
Just get 50 miles, get 25 miles. Don't think about the rest.
How many days did you have planned? Did you have days planned, or?
Yeah, like 11 to 12.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really, I should have put it on paper.
Yeah.
I should have been like, this is a good amount of miles for me to go this day, knowing what I know about it, you know? And I didn't. I don't know. I thought I was kind of invincible.
Yeah.
You know? And I wasn't, and it crushed me, you know? And it crushed my ego pretty bad for a while, too.
Yeah.
I like retracted. I didn't want to even watch any of the race afterwards, like any of the other people. I just got like really, I don't know. I felt like a failure, right? To myself and to like everybody else. And
yeah,
I built it up so much too, like with the media that I was doing at the time, like the content I was producing, that I almost like, I don't know. It got me.
Yeah.
The whole thing got me.
Yeah.
You know? So I was like, all right, well, let's go back and do the 300. And I did the 300 the following October and took second in the 300.
Nice.
And I was like, okay, I can, it rebuilt just a little bit of confidence, you know, like learned a lot about myself. And that's what all this stuff is. You know, I don't know how much like maybe you can relate to any of this in climbing, just consistent like failure on, you're trying to tackle a problem maybe.
Yep.
And you're just failing over and over and over and over and over again. I've heard Alex Honnold talk about that.
Yeah.
I mean, for months.
Yeah.
He'll try to be solving a boulder problem or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gotten like real deep in the hole on a project before where it's just like you're just like trying it and like you've done, it's especially when you get to that point where you're like, I've done all the moves, I've done it in links, and you're just like trying to like actually send it and you just keep falling off of it, and it's just, yeah, it can be kind of a brutal process.
What's the longest you've spent like over time on a climbing problem, or I don't know if I'm using the right terminology.
Yeah, I think probably like a year and a half.
And then you got it?
I did.
That
I mean, not
so good.
like every, not necessarily going out every week, but I had times where I was like going out like basically every week, and it's just, I mean, the project that I'm currently working on, I've been kind of working on and off on for like close to a year. So, but I've been trying to be more like relaxed about it as opposed to like getting totally obsessive about it, because I think that's usually when I end up in the hole, is when I just like you almost have to like you need to want it, but if you want it too bad, it's like not gonna happen. It's really weird. It's like this weird process
if you're trying to force it.
Yeah,
that's like extends to all kinds of things in life though.
Yeah,
when you try to force something, sometimes you just gotta let it. I just imagine you like, have you seen the Queen's Gambit?
Yeah.
When she's staring up at the wall and like moving the chess pieces on the ceiling, I just imagine you're like in this, you're just staring up at your ceiling. Am I wrong?
I don't know if that's how it works. I mean, yeah, I try to like imagine what it feels like to like do certain moves, like if there's a movement that I'm having a hard time with, but I don't know. It's weird. It's like this weird ephemeral thing, because sometimes you like pull on and the movement just works and you're like, wow, that felt great. And you're like, I have no idea what I did differently. It's like, I think the weird thing about bouldering, and this is what, it's kind of new to me. I started bouldering like, well, I guess 3 years ago now, but it's like the first kind of sport that I've done where the margins are so thin between like being able to do it and not being able to do it. Like I've done a lot more stuff where it's like hiking or backpacking, and it's like, yeah, you can be suffering and you can kind of feel like shit, but you can push through it. Like if you like, you can just kind of like accept the pain and deal with it and do it. And bouldering isn't like that. Like you're kind of, there's all these little pieces that have to come together for it to like work. Like the conditions have to be right, because if it's too hot, like your friction on the rock is just not going to be the same. Like you're going to slide off. And unless you're like way stronger than you need to be, like it's going to be really hard to compensate for that. And like you have to be feeling good. Like you have to have like, you need to be awake and like warmed up enough and like have enough like fuel in your body that you're not going to crash, but like not too much so that you feel like you like can't try hard. And yeah, it's just, and you also need to like feel like you're safe so that you're not like stressing about like falling in a weird way like while you're trying to climb. And it's just all these pieces that have to come together for it to work.
Yeah.
And it's very different. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, you can't just like pull off on the side of the trail if you're having stomach digestive problems.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah,
got to
it's
be
just
like even the little things like that have to be like perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It seems like very it seems very objective. You know,
Yeah.
like it's either it happens or it doesn't happen.
Yep.
And where you talk about these other disciplines are more subjective. They're like there's more gray area in them.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you can have like a day where you do a long hike or a long bike ride and you're like, wow, that felt great. Or it can feel like shit, but you still managed to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like not quite the same with bouldering.
So
there's other types of climbing, like, you know, like easier, like multi-pitch stuff, like, or like however, you know, there's different types of climbing where it's more of that experience of like it being kind of more of an endurance sport. But with like bouldering specifically, it's not. It's quite different.
Did you watch the Olympic climbing stuff on the last round of Olympics?
I have not.
Okay. It was the first year I think they had it in the Olympics.
Yeah.
It was interesting. They had like is bouldering where you have like the wall and the problems?
Yeah.
That's bouldering. Yeah, they had bouldering and then they had speed climbing.
Yep.
And then they had
probably lead climbing, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And I remember watching the speed climbing's fascinating just because it's so like explosive.
Yeah.
They're just like weirdly, inhumanly going up. So I mean, they're just in this constant state of like thrust. It was just fascinating to see them because they looked like they were floating up the wall.
Mm-hmm.
These people. So that was just like fascinating. I think that the bouldering part of it was really interesting, but it wasn't very good for TV.
Yeah.
Because it's just not very sensational looking.
Yeah. I think so it's interesting because like the style that they have for like bouldering for competitions is very different from outdoor bouldering. Like it tends to have a lot more coordination moves and like dynos and like dynamic movement. I think in part to make it more interesting to watch. Because a lot of climbing, like if you're not a climber, watching climbing can be kind of boring. Like it's just because it is like such a like a micro sport where it's like, oh, like you're doing these really small shifts with your body to make it work.
Yeah.
And I think if you have that experience of climbing, you can watch somebody doing that and be like, oh, that's cool to see that. But like if you don't have that experience of being on the wall, like making those micro adjustments, you might not even like notice that that's what's going on. You're like, oh, they're just like grabbing onto stuff and like standing on the wall. Like it doesn't look that interesting.
Yeah.
So
that reminds me of the sport of jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is very boring if you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But if you know what's going on, it's like incredible. Yeah. It's like, oh, that person is, moved their arm or did this, turned this one way just a little bit so that they could open up this position so that they could get a counter or whatever. It's kind of in the same vein as that.
Yeah.
Because it is like a chess match. Jiu-jitsu is like a chess match of movement, right?
Yeah.
Which is similar. And I think that all it took for me was a really good color commentator to like explain it to me. And then I got really into it. I was like, so if they had someone that was really good at helping normies understand what's happening.
Yeah.
Right, like Alex Honnold or somebody like that. That's like that's popular, or I think that might bridge the gap. In Olympics isn't there to really like make money, so maybe that's not their priority, right? If they were making it as like a a spectator sport, then maybe. But
I mean, I think that's also part of the reason why they have like speed climbing as part of the Olympics, because like honestly, if you talk to most climbers, I think a lot of climbers like don't really care about speed climbing. Like it's like, oh, it's like a cool physical challenge, but like I think at least for me, one of the things that I really love about climbing is like how unique and different every problem is, and like that experience of having to work through it and figure it out.
Yeah.
And like speed climbing is like so the opposite of that, because you are doing exactly the same movement and you're just figuring out like how can I get faster at it.
Yeah.
But from like a spectator standpoint, it totally makes sense to have that in the Olympics, because you don't need to know anything about climbing to look at that and be like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I can see like why it's difficult. I understand like the rules of what like doing a good job of it is, and what like struggling with it is, without having to have any climbing knowledge.
Right.
It's like, okay, whoever gets to the top of the wall first. Like,
and grab. Yeah. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. It's not like, oh, like, did they use this certain beta or like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally get it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
did any of this climbing base, was there anything that crossed over for you into bikepacking right away? Kind of that got you hooked or started you off on your path?
I don't I think maybe I think more of the connection there is just like a lot of the like climbing training that I've been doing is translatable.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's helped me to be able to, bike pack and bike at least long days. My technical ability is not very good, so biking, yeah, it's like, but I think for me it was more because I've backpacked for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that was like more of the connection, and actually specifically doing like long day hikes and that kind of stuff. It felt like a similar, like it feels like another variation of that, with maybe a little bit more of like the problem solving that you have with climbing. Where you're like having to figure out how to like navigate an obstacle or but
or how to like mount a light on your bike with all this other crap on there or something.
Yeah. The thing is, I'm not like, it's funny because I work as a product designer, but I'm not like and I do enjoy gear, but I'm not like crazy like obsessive about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think I enjoy learning about gear and I enjoy gear that works. But I also want to be able to just go out and do the thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, as long as I have whatever I need to like be able to go out and like do what I want to do, then like it's kind of all like secondary.
Yeah, that's interesting because gear can capture you really. There's there's just such incentive for the gear companies, and people get like so deep in that they lose sight of what they were originally doing sometimes.
Yeah.
They get so like. I've become so, I'm speaking about other people, but like I have become obsessed with gear to a point where it's a point of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like I enjoy it. It's like cool. Like I really love like finding those pieces of gear where you're like, you can tell that somebody put a lot of thought into designing it and like either is a user or talk to people who are using that gear and like really critically thought about what makes it work and what doesn't make it work.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, if I have stuff that works, then I'm like, it's okay. It works. Like, I don't necessarily need to find like the perfect, like most amazing version of it.
Right. It can get so expensive.
Yeah. Well, there's that too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that's why I sewed all my bike bags. I was
Mhm.
like, I don't have money to like, buy a whole bike packing setup.
Yeah. That's cool that you have the skills to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, and also access to to the sewing machines at Catula.
Right. Yeah, to the industrial.
Yeah, like, it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also made my front bag harness, which was interesting, and it worked.
Yeah.
But I changed the design. I just made a new one that I need to actually test out. Because I was getting some like rubbing, just like with the style of design. It was like kind of the ones where they like dangle a little bit. And there's like a lot of like flopping and rubbing that was happening on my front roll. Yeah.
So I just went through a process where I had a harness like that.
Yeah.
Chris and I copied basically the Revelet pronghorn harness, which is just like a super ultralight, simple harness, no bells and whistles. And it was fine on my first bike that I had it on. And then I moved it over to the bike I currently have, which is a Specialized Epic Evo. And the cables come out the front of the head tube.
Oh.
And it was a real problem. Like, so what it was doing was, it would be fine if you'd keep your handlebars, straight. Every time you'd move decently over to the left, that bag would push those cables and bend them way back.
Ooh,
right. Yeah. And it was dropper cable, brake cable, and rear shifter cable. Right. And so I went on
nothing important.
No, nothing important.
You don't need any of those.
I mean, the dropper cable you could live without. And the shifter cable you could probably figure out a workaround. But the brake cable was what I was worried about, because once you wear through the brake cable, and lose your fluid, you have no brakes.
Yeah.
You have no rear brake. So I went on one bikepacking trip, and I noticed that it was starting to wear. It wore through the first layer of that material, or the whatever the outermost stuff is, and you could see the inner tube where the pressurized line for the brake cable. And I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be, it's not a problem now, but it's gonna be a problem later for sure. So I had to figure out something else. So I ended up with a cradle. Have you heard of those?
Maybe. Is it like
they're
the
like
Rogue Panda thing, or
yeah,
no?
they're like fixed.
Yep.
There's a few companies that make them.
Yeah, Chris has one. So that's the one that I just made that I haven't tried it out yet.
Okay.
Is based on that design. So I just like modeled
a cradle
parts. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like fixed on your handlebars, and it has like brackets that come out.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So I'm stoked to try it out.
So did you like 3D print one or something?
Yeah. I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lucky.
I know.
I mean, 3D printers are pretty cheap these days. You could probably, most people could probably get one. But anyway, there's a company called Miss Grape Ilisco or something. They're out of Italy.
Okay.
They make a cradle called the Miss Grape cradle. So for people that don't have access to a 3D printer or the skills, there's that company. I was going to go with it because it actually had a secondary mount that came off of it that you can mount your accessories to. So like your front light or whatever.
Yeah.
A GPS or whatever you wanted up there. They don't make it for 35 millimeter handlebars, only for 31.8.
Oh, interesting.
And my bike, the Epic Evo, has 35 mil handlebars. So that was out, even though that was the one I really wanted. Salsa makes one. They make an anything cradle. And then that I think you just use some like straps to hold your roll in. And then Rogue Panda just came out with one.
Yeah.
That I ended up buying.
That's the one that Chris has.
Oh, he got that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's stoked about it.
It's nice.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's compatible with both 35 and 31.8
Yep.
handlebars. They're working on an accessory bar for it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the next problem I had, was when I put it on, I couldn't. I mount my light on my handlebars.
Okay.
And I couldn't find a spot for it where it was like up and out enough, because my roll had to sit kind of up and out, not down as far.
Yep.
Now because of that cable problem. And so now I had to figure out how to get my light like up enough and kind of out enough into the right position. So I managed to kind of make a temporary workaround for it, like through like Amazon adapter parts, and that's like half the battle on some of that stuff. You make one change like that, and it has this like cascade of other issues, down the line of other things you need to mount. So, but yeah, so interesting.
That's actually, I still need to figure out like a lighting setup.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. That's way down on my list, but
sorry,
let's jump
lots
to
of
it.
Questions.
Let's start in. So let's just go to lighting. So, well, hold on. Before we jump into the stuff, let me. So I just want to like put a disclaimer out there. There's a big difference between touring and racing.
Yeah.
Big difference when you're bikepacking, and they're almost like two different worlds. The needs for each one are completely different, right?
Yeah.
And so, for people listening, like depending on your objective, the stuff I say today, my advice, I'm going to try to hit both sides of touring and racing. But right now in my life, I do more racing. So I'm usually in the mindset of less stuff is better, only the minimalist amount of stuff. But I've definitely toured before.
Yeah.
And bikepack toured. And it's a lot more comfortable, and you bring a lot more stuff because you're going slower, and your goal is not to like cover ground quickly. Yeah. So what is your goal right now in your bikepacking?
So I'm curious to hear about both. I have a trip that I'm trying to plan in the fall. That's kind of, I think would probably be a little bit more on like the racing side. Like trying to see how fast I can do it. And I want to do, like my goal is to do a section of the AZT basically from Pine to State Line.
Okay.
So
the Portage will be in that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just kind of trying to figure out, I mean, so I've just been trying to like, So a lot of my questions are kind of like geared towards that because I feel pretty confident about like the touring side of things because it's quite similar to backpacking, like kind of the stuff that you're bringing. I'm very comfortable with that kind of setup.
Yeah.
But yeah, the stuff that's more on like the racing side, and I think there's some more like specific tricks that you have like for that I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you want to start?
I mean, I guess since we were on the lighting, we could start with the lighting. That was like I've never ridden at night, and I don't have like a lighting setup currently.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I'm like, well, I could see how like that might end up happening on like some of these longer days. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to hear like what you're doing for that.
Let me get to my notes on it. So, yeah, lighting's interesting. And there was a time where when I was bikepacking with my dad or backpacking with my dad, we kind of were like, when the sun starts to go down, it's time to make camp because you never do anything at night. Yeah. And then there was like a moment, an epiphany I had at one point during bikepacking where I was like, well, I can have a light and I can just keep going. And so I'm not like beholden to this giant ball of fire in the sky.
Yeah.
Like I can just go all night if I want to. And it was like this world changing moment for me. Right. And then it was a matter of, okay, what's the lighting that works for me? Yeah. What's the recharge situation like? How many batteries do I have to carry? It opened up this logistical challenge. And so what I ended up with, and many people, this is a personal preference based on how well you can see at night. Mm-hmm. So I suggest you test it. You try stuff, you buy a light, you set it up, you go and you do a night ride up in the mountains and you see how it works. You set it up with your gear, get your bags and your cradle and everything and see how that works out. Like test it, like test everything, test, right? Especially if you're going to be doing a race. So I really am kind of loyal to Phoenix lighting. Mm-hmm. It's Fenix.
Yep. I've looked at some of their lights.
Yeah, they make good stuff. They just make really durable, solid stuff. The light I have is I think it's the BC26R. So it's kind of their bike mountable light. And I've experimented with putting it both on my helmet and on my handlebars. Mm-hmm. And the BC26R uses a 21700 battery, so it's a relatively large rechargeable battery, but it is replaceable. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a key with bikepacking is if you're going to go with a battery option, you want to have something that you can replace or carry extra batteries with you or recharge on the fly, right? Now you could go with what's called a Dynamo hub, and those are special hubs that have a wire that run up and recharge your stuff while you're riding. Mm-hmm. That's a possibility. However, you have to be going like at least 6 miles per hour or something to have those things working. And the problem with the Arizona Trail is there's so much hiking that you're going under 6 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work a whole lot. Now people have done it before and it is possible, but I wouldn't bank on it for that. I've never used a Dynamo hub. I don't want to invest all the money in the special wheel setup for it. Yeah. So I just go with the Phoenix light on the handlebars with a mount. And then I do my math on how long I'm going to be out for and what I suspect my lighting level is going to be, because there's like lumen charts and hour charts on their website. Mm-hmm. So you can figure out like, okay, first you need to know, okay, there's like 6 different levels of brightness on these lights, or maybe 5. You need to figure out which one you can ride road on and which one you can ride single track on comfortably. Yeah. Right. So are you going to be on a medium or a low setting? And then how many hours are you going to predict that you're going to be using that on? Right. And then you can kind of like extrapolate to how many batteries am I going to need? And, or is there going to be a situation where I'm going to recharge? Mm-hmm. Now we could layer in a power bank into this equation. I don't carry a power bank. I've never carried a power bank until I've Colorado Trail Race coming up in August. It's the first race I'm going to ever carry a power bank for. And I'm actually doing that for my GPS, not for my lighting.
Okay.
I'll just carry enough
Yeah.
enough batteries to be able to get me through the whole thing, basically. I'll do the math on how much night riding I'll do. So on something like that, I plan, and this is kind of segue into other areas here. I'll plan how many hours on and how many hours sleeping I'm going to do, basically. That's where I start. So for a Colorado trail race, it's a 6-day effort, a 5 to 6 day effort. So, and I've based that off of looking at other people that I know I ride the same as and looking at their finish times.
Yeah.
That's basically the best benchmark, right? If you don't know where to start, you just have to go out and see. Like if you're totally new, that's going to be a learning process.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to figure that out. Like how far can you go in a day, or how many hours can you move for in a day?
Yeah.
Because how
So
far,
that's actually sorry, go ahead.
well, how far you can go is variable on what the terrain's like, right? So
Yeah.
it's a matter of how many hours will you be moving in a day.
Well, and that's what I've been trying to figure out too. Like I did kind of a longer day ride 2 weeks ago, I think. I did like Flagstaff Loop Trail and then like the Popsicle out Rogers Lake and Gold Digger.
Yeah.
Which is the longest ride I'd done. And I mean, honestly, like I felt good. The biggest issue that I had, was I did a lot of like walking my bike on Rocky Ridge and Forces of Nature because my technical ability is not great.
Those trails suck anyway.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like scootering over stuff that I could scooter over or like getting off and like, yeah. So that took a while. And then I did have a bit of a challenge with like food. I reached a point where I had like 15 to 20 minutes where I kind of felt like I was going to hurl, and I was like able to get through it. And like did the rest of the ride. It got done. I was like, my legs feel great. My butt's a mess, but you know, working on that too. I'm getting a new saddle. I figured out I've been using the saddle that my bike came with.
Yeah.
Which actually has been decent, I think, for a saddle that comes with a bike. But it doesn't have like any cutouts or anything like that. So it's just like,
have you measured your sit bone
too
width?
much. I have not. I'm like, I forgot what I've been looking at one of the Ergon saddles. Just based, like, did some research on it and just like seeing, but I don't know about the sizing yet. I need to check that.
Yeah, that's like the first place you should start with saddles is do like the at-home test where you just like, I use a piece of cardboard and tinfoil and then just set it on like somewhere that you can put your bare ass on. You know, maybe not, I was gonna say coffee table, but maybe not your coffee table. Something stable that you can sit on, and take everything off and just sit on it, and then it'll imprint on it with your sit bones, and then you can kind of mark the centers with the Sharpie and then measure that.
Cool.
And then you can plug that stuff back into Ergon's calculator, and they'll give you a size based on that. I love Ergon's products.
Yeah.
Grips and saddle, I'm all in on Ergon.
I have their grips. And I was looking at some of the different saddle options, and like specifically for the issue I was having, it seemed like the way their saddle is designed is like much more geared towards that.
Yeah.
So yeah. But I did, after I got back, I had like an hour and a half or an hour to 2 hours where I just felt like I was going to throw up.
Yeah, nauseous.
Because I think I just didn't have quite the right mix of like food. And so that's kind of, I think that just like my experience from that day is like, I think that's like the biggest thing for me, like other than the saddle, that I need to work out. Because if it weren't for that, I felt like I could have kept going, like no problem.
Yeah.
So
nausea is a tough one, and everybody experiences nausea. Yeah. Everybody, especially when it gets hotter, people get nauseous.
It was pretty toasty that day too.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I've heard commonly across the board is you can do like gummies instead of other types of food that you've been eating. Gummies sit pretty well, like sweet and sour type stuff. Sit pretty well with most stomachs. I think most people say that works when it gets hot. Yeah. I personally love doing ice cream when I can get it at Resupply. Yeah. And then I'll bring ice cream with me and eat it while it's melting. Like, because it just cools me down.
Yeah.
I actively try to keep myself cool because I roast in the heat. So I'll bring extra water to like pour. I wear a sun hoodie and I pour the water over my sun hoodie to like act as like a radiator for my whole body. So like preventatively keeping cool. But on the food thing, you know, the one thing, no matter if you're racing or touring, I think you need to like preventatively eat.
Yeah, and that's what I was doing. It felt like I think it was just like it felt like I had the wrong food because then and I think I just had like too many things that were more on like the sweet side, you know, because a lot of like snacks and stuff tend to be sweeter. And like the thing that did actually settle my stomach was like salted pistachios that I brought. I was like, this is I need like more of these. So yeah.
Yeah, you'll learn that
But I
over
did
time.
that was a trick that Chris told me, and like that's something that was really valuable going on the trips with him, of like stopping to eat and like setting a timer. And that's what I did. Is like literally set a timer, and that helped a lot.
Yeah.
Because that's something that for me is like very different in biking compared to like even long day hikes where I'm moving fast or backpacking. Like the amount of food that I need for a day of biking is so much more than I need for like a long day hike or backpacking. And so it's just interesting. I don't seem to be able to like push it as much in biking as I can with those other activities.
Right, for the same input. Having the same, the ratio that you need is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very personalized. I know people that excel on beef sticks and mixed nuts.
Yeah.
And I've tried that and it does not work for me. It's horrible for me, right? So everybody's totally different, personalized. So much of this stuff is personalized. It's hard to just proclaim that you have the magic bullet for everything, right? But the one common thread is preventative eating, making sure that you don't get into bonk.
Yeah.
Once you get in past a point where you're at a calorie deficit, it's more difficult to pull yourself out of that, right? Yeah. You can do it, but sometimes it takes like 12 hours.
Yeah.
Or 6 hours to pull yourself out of it, right?
Yeah.
So if you're touring, that's not a big deal. You're going slower, you can just stop and chill out and take a nap or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're racing, it could be a race ender, right? Because you've now compromised a day, possibly, depending on the length of the race. I've seen people on the Arizona Trail 800. I saw people completely blow up the first 2 days and then rally and come in second or third place by the end.
Wow.
So on a race that long,
yeah, you have more time.
Yeah, you have a little bit of grace, you know?
Yeah.
So like it's very interesting. And I think if I would have given myself more grace on that, I think I could have rallied and pulled through, but I didn't. And I know that now. I know now to give myself a little bit of time. So that, you know, the food thing's an interesting thing. You just have to experiment. I've found that I've like obsessively gone down one direction where I've done just like all tailwind and I've done too much tailwind. And I've really started to like really crave protein, like big, like pizza or burgers or whatever, like 2 days in. Cause I'm just like, I cannot drink any more of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that's any food that you just like, that's all you're having for 2 days. It's a problem. You're going to want something different, right?
Yeah.
So you're just going to have to find what works for you. You are going to have to plan to organize on multi-day stuff. You're going to have to make sure you don't run out of food, right?
Yeah. That's like a big thing too is like just figuring out.
Right.
Just thinking about like, okay, what can I resupply and what can't I resupply? And like, you know, carrying with me the stuff that I can't resupply as easily. You know, just from like whatever you find along the trail, right? It's like, yeah.
Right. So like this pine to the terminus, you know, you have a few spots there, but it gets pretty. I mean, I guess you have like Tucson's a big resupply, Flag's a big resupply. It's pretty gracious, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
On your ability to get, you know, especially if you make a mistake on your planning, to be able to solve that within like a day.
Yeah.
You know, and that happens all the time, especially with racing. You are riding the line. So like racing is like, what's the minimum amount of stuff I can carry for this effort that I'm trying to accomplish, right? And so you're always gambling on everything. You're gambling on your sleep kit. You're gambling on your rain gear sometimes, the weather, and you're gambling on how much food you're bringing in between your spots. Because the idea is like you bring the precise amount of things of it like needed for how your body's going to respond over those few days.
Yeah.
And that's like almost never goes right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so the result is you get yourself in, you either like run out of water, or you brought too much water and you were slower, or you didn't have enough food, or you brought too much food. That's been my problem the last few races is I bring food thinking I'm going to eat it, and then I got nauseous and I couldn't eat it. And I just carried it for like 200 miles.
Yeah.
And I was like, why didn't I just throw that away like 200 miles ago? You know, but I was concerned that my appetite was going to come back and I was going to need it.
Yeah.
So that was just a mistake, you know? Yeah. So,
what's your like sleep kit like for races?
Yeah. So I have, let me pull this out. I have all kinds of,
oh boy. Yeah.
So, I have tables of sleep kits because this is a thing that I can, you know, I kind of have I do have a very addictive personality and I can obsess down holes of things, and sleep kit's one of them, and weight is one of them for sure on this stuff. You can really like spend all your extra money on buying like something that's like, you know, 2 ounces lighter.
Yeah. Luckily, I'm like, I feel like the fact that like I don't have like that much extra money, so I'm like, well, I'm kind of guarded from that a little bit.
Yeah. Look, I think that on the money topic, I think that some people think that that's a barrier, but you can bike pack with stuff that you have, and you can buy used gear. I think that's probably I was thinking about this morning. Like
used gear.
You never want to, like climbing, you don't buy used gear.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't think it would be a very like you could probably buy like maybe shoes or like some clothing or whatever, but like your gear that you're using to have your life in the balance.
Yeah. You don't want to buy a used rope or harness.
Right. You would never do that.
No.
That's just a really bad idea.
Yeah.
Bike packing, you can buy a lot of used stuff and get away with it, right? Yeah. Like especially used outdoor gear.
Yeah.
Like that stuff's so expensive, and people will go through it like water, especially during COVID. People bought like all this outdoor gear, and now they're like, it's just sitting in their garage, you know? Yeah. So I think there is a way to do it if you have patience on the gear. So my sleep kit, basically, I have like 3 sleep kits, depending on what I'm trying to do. I have a touring sleep kit, and then I have a ultralight racing sleep kit with weather. And then I have an ultralight racing sleep kit, no weather. And so those all vary on how much stuff I'm bringing. So basically the touring kit is a tent. So it's a Big Agnes Fly Creek UL1.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty light tent.
I have the Copper Spur, which has been my go-to for backpacking.
Yeah.
And actually, I tend to sleep out usually on trips. I usually don't bring a tent.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about this. Okay. Since we're making noise.
Oh, we can make noise. Most people probably can't hear that dog barking, by the way.
Oh, cool.
It's a little distracting for us, but
oh, it's fine. It's like fun to watch him play. Yeah, I just don't. I like sleeping out, so I don't really bring a tent backpacking or anything.
Yeah.
What I've done a lot, and the reason why I really love the Copper Spur tent, and I can't remember if I don't think the Fly Creek has the same feature, which is that the Copper Spurs have what's called the Fast Fly setup.
Yeah, it does.
It does? Okay, cool. Yeah, I love that feature. I've done a lot of backpacking trips where, and like for anyone who doesn't know, it's basically you just set it up with the fly, the poles, and the footprint, and no tent body. And I love it because it feels like a really nice kind of like middle ground between like not bringing any sort of shelter and like bringing like a full tent.
Yeah.
Especially when I like sleeping out. So I'm like, well, I really am only going to use this if it's raining.
Right.
And I've slept in it in a storm, and it's great.
Yeah.
So that is a really nice feature. For bike packing, it's like kind of a lot. Like it's a lot of shit to bring for, you know, if you're like, oh, I might need it.
Right.
So
yeah, the poles are kind of
The poles are kind of a lot.
difficult to find a spot for on a bike. You can run
I
them
put mine on my front roll.
Yeah. I've had poles I've had the elastic between my poles wear out. The elastic bands that pull the poles together. I've had it rub through.
Wow.
So that I go to set my tent up and I have to duct tape the pole.
Really?
Yeah.
From being on the front roll.
I think I had it in my frame.
Oh, okay.
Frame bag.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the first trip I did with Chris, I brought the Fast Fly and I just had it like next to, like, butted up against my front roll bag. So.
All right. So I have to say one thing. I love the Fast Fly too. I thought it was a great idea for the 500, the Pinions and Pines 500 that I did last year. I got to the third night and, I set up the Fast Fly. I got in my sleeping bag in there. And then I woke up at, 2 or 3 in the morning with a sleeping bag full of ants.
Oh, nice.
On the inside.
Oh, yeah. That's nice.
Mm-hmm. Crawling on, it was...
Added warmth.
I was so done. That was the last night. So it might have been the third night or fourth night. And I just was like done.
That's
I was
rough.
like, fuck this. I'm going home today.
Yeah.
And I finished the race. I did put in like a 14-hour day or something that day because I was like, I can't do this anymore. Right. So that is the only downside, right? Yep. So if there's like mosquitoes,
yep,
or you don't have any bug netting with the Fast Fly scenario, so you can get critters in there. So, so basically, all right. So back to the
totally like interrupted.
Totally good. Back to the full tent kit. So tent, footprint, poles, stakes, and then I have a Mountain Hardwear Phantom Spark 28 degree down bag that's pretty light. It's an older bag. They don't even make it anymore. I was looking at like quilts. Quilts are very popular right now.
Yeah.
And very light. Very, very light.
That's like the one thing for me. So I need to get a new sleeping bag because I had a 15-degree marmot bag and I had an ill-fated backpacking trip in Olympic National Park, 3 years ago now. And my backpack got stolen. And all of my gear in it got stolen. Oh. So that's like the one piece I haven't replaced yet is the sleeping bag. But I think I've been looking at the what's the company? Why am I forgetting the company? Totally blanking on the company.
Yeah.
It'll come back to me.
Hyperlight?
No. It's the same sleeping bag that Chris has. It's from that company. Why?
Oh. Because he has a down allergy, right?
I don't think so. I think his bags are down.
Chris Bunch?
Yeah.
He's got a down allergy.
Okay, maybe they're not down.
Yeah. I think he got a down bag from this mystery company that actually worked for him, though. He found that he didn't get allergic to that particular type of down for whatever reason.
What is the company?
I don't know. We'll have to.
It's killing
I'll put
me.
it in the description.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't remember, of course.
Go watch Chris Bunch's episode for more.
Yeah, it's not Feathered Friends. It's shit. Anyway.
Okay.
I'll remember at some point.
Yeah, no worries.
So, yeah. But I guess what I was trying to say is, like, I sleep very cold, and so that's, like, the one piece of my sleep kit where I'm like, if I have to carry extra weight, like, I would rather not bring a sleeping pad, not bring a tent, and, like, bring a warm bag, because I have spent a lot of nights not sleeping because I was cold. And I'm like, well, then it's, like, not even worth it. Like, why'd you bring the sleeping bag if you can't sleep in it because you're cold?
Yeah.
That's, like, been a really big thing for me with like, backpacking specifically.
Yeah. So for, like, bike pack racing, it's not an uncommon story to hear. Like, oh yeah, you just laid down until you woke up shivering and then you keep going.
Yeah.
Because you didn't bring a bag. All you brought was an emergency bivvy.
Yeah.
And you just get in there with your whatever jacket you have and you're just getting like an hour and a half of sleep.
Yeah.
And you basically lay down and then the shivers wake you up and then you get up and keep going. Like that's the level of like uncomfort that racing brings you to, right?
Yeah.
Basically you should be exhausted enough that you can just pretty much sleep in almost any condition. Right? It sucks. It sucks, but you're not there to, it's begin back to the beginning. What are your goals at the beginning of this? So you just have to find that balance, right? For me, I like the middle area of those two things. There is a middle. There is a third option. And it's maybe not, as comfortable as I am at my house with my nice big bed and my cooled air mattress or cooled mattress and everything. And like everything's ideal. But like I have a minimalist sleeping pad, a fairly light sleeping bag, and a bivvy, when I'm doing my race kit. So the sleeping pad I use, on my full tent kit, I use a Neo Air X Lite sleeping pad, which is fairly light.
I have one of the, I have.
But I dislike it because it's so loud. Actually, I don't have the Neo
Air. I have the Nemo.
Oh.
The Nemo one.
Do you like it?
Yeah. I actually, this is the first inflated pad I've had for a while. I did have the Neo Air, but I'm a bit of a wild sleeper, and I have a habit of ending up not on the pad and so I put a hole in it really quick, and I was just tired of having to like watch out for my pad. So for backpacking, I had switched over to just the Z-Rest, which is like, it's not that comfortable, but there's like a base level of comfort that you will have, and you don't have to worry about like putting it down in a cactus or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I switched to that for backpacking. For bikepacking, it doesn't work because it's too bulky.
Well, a lot of people carry that on the Arizona Trail 800.
Oh, interesting.
Just because of the cactus factor.
Yeah. I did just sew like a footprint for myself that has like little bungees on it that I can attach my sleeping pad to, so that I don't so the sleeping pad doesn't end up off of the footprint. Because that's what happened on my last trip. Is like I was like waking up and I'm like, okay, well, I'm off in the dirt. The sleeping pad is off in the dirt. Like the footprint isn't really doing much because like nothing is staying together. This is not working. Yeah. So yeah, and I actually, what I've been thinking about for this trip is honestly just my sleep kit being like footprint and a bag and no pad. Because I don't really care about sleeping on the ground. Like, it's fine. It's not that comfortable. It's fine.
Yeah.
I think as long as I'm warm. And I don't want to put a hole in my sleeping bag. So that was kind of my thought on that.
Yeah. That definitely solves that problem.
Yeah.
So when I'm racing, I do a Climate Inertia X-frame.
Okay. I'm not familiar
so
with that.
That's the bag. That's the sleeping pad with all the holes in it.
Oh, yes.
Have you seen that?
Yeah. How do you like it?
I've
always been interested by it.
I thought I was totally like, this is going to be the worst night's sleep ever. And I slept on it a couple nights and I was like, this wasn't that bad. There's a couple things about it that are uniquely interesting. So the Neo Air X Lite, the one I was using for the more touring side of things, it's so loud that I actually got better sleep on the Climate because it wasn't as loud. So I was like thinking I was getting good sleep, but I actually wasn't because it just kept waking me up, like micro waking me up all night. So that was one thing. I was like, this is actually better. The other thing, it forces me to sleep on my back. I'm a side sleeper, but it forces me to sleep on my back because the way it's structured, it's not very good for side sleepers because it just has like an inflated area on your waist and then on your shoulders and then really nothing for your feet.
Yeah.
So, the third thing I like about it is it's so like small and compact that I put it inside my sleeping bag. So it doesn't do what you're saying where it ends up somewhere else. Right.
Yeah.
It's just slide. And I know they make sleeping bags that have like sleeves in them. Like, Big Agnes, I think, makes sleeping bags. There's a whole bunch that have sleeves to prevent that problem. But this was just the kind of the cheap way of doing it.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Yeah. So really what I do is I actually leave everything and then I put that in a bivvy. So I have my sleeping bag, my Climate pad, and it's all in just like a bivvy. And then I just deflate the thing and roll it all up together.
That's brilliant.
And put it in my front roll.
Yeah.
So it's super fast to take out. You just literally just like pop the whole thing out, roll it out, blow up the pad, and slide in. And with the pad being inside of the sleeping bag, and inside of the bivy, it actually has a little bit of protection.
Yeah.
From being poked and stuff.
Yeah.
Like maybe not a needle, like from a cactus or whatever, but it's a little protected in there.
Cool.
So it works really, really well, and I've been doing that the last few times. It's fast too, and then you just roll it up. You kind of like wipe it off as you're rolling it up, wipe it off, roll it up, and then put it in your front roll, and you're done, and you're on your way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have the same bivy that Chris has? Is that the Cabatic? Is that the company? Oh,
I don't know. I've gone through a few different ones.
He just got one that he started using on our trips, and I was like, that seems pretty nice. Like, it seemed like it contains you a little bit, which is nice because, like I said, I tend to migrate.
Yeah, so I
in my sleep
did have the Soul emergency bivy or Soul escape bivy. I used that for a little bit. It's just like a cheap. It's like $35 or $40 or something. And it's really for just minimalist use, really like racing, not comfort.
Yeah.
And I used that for a little bit, but it didn't have a cover on it. Then I switched to an MSRE bivy, which had a little more space inside, and was also lighter. And I have on the way coming a company called Bora Gear. They make Cuban fiber stuff, Dynamo stuff. And so I decided to go with a Dynamo for Colorado Trail Race. I decided to go with a Dynamo bug bivy with a mesh screen.
Okay. So it's like Dynamo on the bottom. And then...
It's the bed of its Dynamo. And then all the way kind of up to maybe the chest. And then there's a chest zip. Okay. And then it's the whole thing's not mesh. It's like only mesh over the face. Yep. Yeah. And then you can like guy out the mesh to like your tarp or whatever you're carrying on there, or a guy line.
Yeah.
It's only 4 ounces.
Wow.
So it's incredibly light. So I keep getting like lighter with the setup, and I really wanted the mesh covering because of some people have told me mosquitoes could be a problem on the CTR. Some haven't. I'm not going to risk it. So I just went with the mesh netting just in case. So that's where I'm landing.
Cool.
The one thing I heard about the Cuban fiber or the Dynamo from Kurt Ruffsnyder actually is it is lighter, but it's less packable than like Sil Poly.
Yeah, it's kind of stiff.
Yep.
I'm also curious if it's loud at all because it can be kind of
like crinkly. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I get it next week. I think it comes in. So we'll see. So, but cool. I'm going to use the same like system for that.
Sweet.
Yeah. And then, so that's my ultralight kit is what I explained to you. Now if there's weather, I added a 6x9 Sil Poly tarp on top of that, and a single carbon pole, like a 48-inch carbon pole that because the tarp thing is great, except for it always freaked me out, like above tree line on CTR, or some places in Arizona, it's kind of hard to find a spot.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. It's way more convenient to just be able to put it up anywhere and not have to like organize your sleeping area around a tree that you can find, because you can't always find the ideal like spot on the ground that's next to a tree that doesn't have like branches that are going to fall and kill you in your sleep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These are all like factors.
Yep.
So having the one carbon pole, I think the carbon pole is like 2.8 ounces. So the carbon pole was like a no-brainer for that, and it breaks down to I think like 11 inches or something, so I can carry it in the frame bag.
Sweet.
So if there is going to be rain, like CTR, there's definitely there's always a chance of rain on CTR. That's like the big thing about that race is how wet it is. I'm carrying the carbon pole, the Sil Poly tarp, and then I do have Dynamo cord for all the tie outs and everything. And I spent a significant amount of time learning how to tie knots that I could set this thing up on full autopilot, totally like wrecked, haven't slept for 30 hours or whatever, and I can still get this thing set up in a rainstorm.
Nice.
I'm really focusing on my process there to make sure that I'm like perfect on autopilot on that, so I can set up the whole thing in I think 7.5 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. I time myself at home. Every Monday I do my tarp process with the knots that I've learned and everything. And that's the important stuff when you're racing is getting your process in such a way that you're not thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
that you're just doing it, you know? So yeah, that's the sleep kit. And I like that climate. So I bought it used on eBay,
Mm-hmm.
the one I got, and then
Wow, that's bold.
yeah, and it was and then it went flat the first night I used it.
Yeah. Big surprise.
Your crystal,
Yeah.
your crystal ball told you that one. So so I emailed Climate, and they were like, "Oh yeah, there's a problem with the valve on that model, so we'll send you a brand new one with a different valve system."
Wow.
So they just sent me a brand new one. Yeah, so that worked out for me.
That's great.
So that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
cheapskates like me.
That was like the experience that I got sick of with like the inflating pads, like backpacking. It's like, you're like, oh, this is great, and then if it goes flat, you're like, I have nothing, and now I'm just carrying this thing.
Yeah,
like basically a piece of trash.
Right.
For the rest of the trip.
If the valve is bad.
Yeah, or even sometimes if you get like a really small hole that you can't find on a trip, it's just like. But.
So if I was racing
for bikepacking, it's like a different, It's like you just don't have the space.
Yeah, right. And a lot of this was porting over from backpacking to bikepacking. Being able to carry 35 pounds worth of gear in I don't even know the liters anymore on the backpack I used to carry. But taking all of that and then putting it on a bike was my first like, oh, this isn't gonna work moment.
Yeah.
What my problem was is I started adding bags instead of editing down my gear. It was like, oh, well, I need to add more bags. Where are all the places I can put stuff on my bike?
Yeah.
And then I had like a 50, 60 pound bike, and it was miserable to ride, and it wasn't like fun to ride either.
Yeah. So
then it was a process of, okay, editing down my gear.
Yeah.
And that actually I did better visually on paper. So, and I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I have this, there's this thing called lighterpack.com. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
So it's like this, here, you can look at it. It's like this, it's like a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Like an online spreadsheet basically. And I think it's free.
Cool.
I think it's like an open source deal, and it basically allows you to put in your gear. And I used to do this on spreadsheets. And it
has like all the weights in there.
Yep, you can put all the weights
That's
in.
cool.
You can put links in, and then it totals everything and like categorizes it into different sections. And so what I'll do, and I have a link in the description on this podcast. Every one of my races I track on LighterPack. So I'll start with putting everything down on paper first and saying, okay, what's all the stuff I think I'm going to need to bring? And then I have it segmented out by what bag it goes in, what area on my bike it goes into.
Yep.
Which sometimes that kind of by the end of a trip, that kind of ends up like different.
Yeah.
Like things end up in different bags. But at least when I start, I have a nice organizational system for everything. And then that allows me to kind of like have a 3,000 foot view of like, do I have good weight distribution of my gear? Am I putting stuff efficiently in here? And it also kind of shows me the evolution of how things change over time.
Yeah.
From different trips that I've done on it, right? And also shares information. So like other people that use that, I'll look at their stuff and see what their gear setup is. So it's just a good way to share information. Yeah. So yeah.
Do you mind if I keep this?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. I brought it just for reference today.
Awesome.
But I'll send you I'll send you the link for it too.
Cool.
My stuff's all public, all the lighter pack stuff that I do.
Sweet.
So
yeah, I have like a spreadsheet right now for gear stuff that like I've been putting together, but I've never been that obsessive about counting weight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I don't do it for the weight.
But like,
so much.
Yeah, but like, it's nice that it like keeps track roughly of like what's
right.
Yeah.
Well,
but and it's nice to have like a spreadsheet too, to just be like, okay, these are all the things I need.
Yes, it really helps me feel good going into an event that I'm not forgetting something, because I systematically pack based off of that.
Yeah.
So there's like you can star things with like a red, gold, or green star, and I have a system in place where I'll star it once I've packed it, because I pack like over a week. Like I start like on a Monday.
Wow.
And I don't repack.
Yeah.
But I slowly pack like a section at a time.
Okay.
when I'm getting ready for a race, right?
Yeah. I think Chris is like that too.
Yeah.
I'm like literally packing them. I'm like, wow, for bike packing, I'm packing like 2 days before the trip, which
Yeah.
usually if I'm backpacking or whatever, I'm like throwing shit in a bag like the night before. Like that's been but again, for that, I've like done it enough that I'm like, I'm bringing the same shit every time. So I can just throw it in there and like,
Yeah.
and for bike packing, it's a little different. The first time I packed my bike, it took me so long because there's so many bags. And I've gotten so used to like my backpacking pack where there's it's like one chamber.
Right.
And like you have to like sort like you want to like pay attention to the weight distribution within that.
Right.
And like the order that you're putting things in, but it's like one thing that you're putting it in.
Right.
And with the bike, I was like, no, I have all these different options for where to put stuff, and I like don't know where to start.
Yeah.
But I kind of figured it out a little bit. Like I feel like I've been getting better at it. And I'm working on sewing a new seat bag too because I realized I wanted some like side pockets on it, and I wanted a place to be able to put a chamois if I have like a second chamois on a trip.
Yeah.
For it to like air out during the day.
Right.
So
to rotate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm adding that.
It's a good call.
But I messed it up. I sewed straps on the wrong side. So
Oops.
I have to take them off and resew it. I like finished it and I was like, sweet, this thing looks awesome. And then I went to like put it on the bike and I was like, oh no, I put the strap attachment on the wrong side.
Oh no.
Classic.
Yeah, you know how to fix it though. You only
I do know
have
how
one
to fix
person
it.
to blame for that.
Yeah. I was a little irritated about it though too because I did a really good job of sewing it. Like it actually turned out nice and I have to rip it apart.
Ugh. With a little seam ripper.
Yeah.
Right?
Such is life.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta do things twice.
Most times. I've really edited down the amount of bags that I carry too.
Yeah.
Over time. So I think now it's a front roll, a frame bag, and a feed bag, like a top tube bag.
Mm-hmm.
Not a feed bag. Sorry, feed bags are like the
side
cylindrical ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, a top tube bag. And that's it.
Yeah.
For racing. That's it.
Where are you putting your water?
Yeah, so I wear a vest.
Ah.
Yeah.
I don't want to wear a vest.
I like a vest. Yeah.
I
distribute my water though.
Yeah.
I don't carry all my water in the vest because then it's too heavy and I'll get saddle sores.
Yep.
From that. So I carry 3 liters in a vest, and then if that's like CTR, you don't need more than 2 liters at any time because there's so much water. So that's thank God, because like from Arizona, that's just such a foreign concept to me because you're carrying. I mean, Arizona Trail, I carried at one point. I had 6 or 7 liters because it was so hot, and we were just going through water like crazy.
When I first started backpacking, I was like, how do people do like month-long backpacking trips? Like you can't carry enough water. And then I realized,
oh yeah,
you're going places where there like is water,
right,
and you can filter it,
right,
and you don't actually need to carry that much water.
Isn't that funny?
But like being in Arizona, I was like, I just don't understand. Like, how do you do that? It doesn't make any sense.
100%. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, so I'll carry let's see, another liter or 2. I can actually do those soft flasks that come in the front of the vests.
Yeah.
I have extra of those, and I'll carry those in my frame bag, or I can pop some extra in the kangaroo pockets on the backpack if I need some extra capacity there. So I'll vary that up and down. But yeah, the vest is, so I have a full suspension bike too, so I don't have like a whole lot of frame space either.
Got it.
Yeah. So that was also a like trimming factor that I had to make, which it makes you have to be way more precise in your planning. Mm-hmm. And then you have to be precise in your planning while you're doing something. You have to be very thoughtful about each decision you make.
Yep.
So going into resupply, you go in with a plan. Like I'll spend, I don't know, if I know I'm coming up on a resupply, if it's a race, often I'll have it all planned out already in advance. Like, okay, I have this many miles to the next waypoint. Yep. And so this is the amount of hours I'm going to be on the bike. And so therefore this is the amount of water I'm going to need to carry and the amount of food I'm going to need to buy at this waypoint, right? It'll be very precise. And it's not a perfect science either. So, because then
Yeah.
things happen and it gets hot and you were like, oh, I didn't think about that or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, on track leaders, you can go and replay
Mm-hmm.
events.
Okay.
That's a huge thing for me. So I'll go and I'll replay something and I'll track somebody, and it tells me how many hours that they spend in certain areas. So I'll be able to get a gauge on how difficult or fast the terrain is.
Yeah.
So it's really good.
I should check that out, because that's a big question I have about, because I haven't done any of the section of the AZT like south of Flag. So that's all unknown to me.
Yeah. Right. So you can go replay last year's race and look and see, you have to like look at like the middle of the pack people, or maybe not the elites, right? Because you can throw out the outliers.
Definitely not in that category.
Yeah. So, but you can generally get an idea for how long, and you can benchmark it. Like, okay, at this time and date, this time stamp, they were here, and then it took them this long to get to here. And then you can kind of, figure out how long you're going to take approximately. And then it's a really good starting point if you don't have any idea.
Yeah.
So, and I do that all the time in every track leaders race, all the way back to like 2013 is in the archives on track leaders.
Cool.
So you just have to hunt it down a little bit. It's not the easiest thing to find, but pro tip, you just look at whatever the current naming convention is and just change the date to the previous year.
Cool.
And it'll come up with the last one.
Sweet.
So,
I feel like I currently don't have like a really good sense of like how fast I am relative to like how like the speed that people are normally doing these things. Like it's a hard. Yeah. I'm just.
Do you have a bike computer? Like a navigation? Do you use like a Garmin or anything like that?
No.
What do you use for?
I mostly just use my Gaia, like on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I did just get an InReach because I never had InReach before. It's just like, well,
right, for messaging.
like emergencies, yeah.
Which
is, I don't know. I'm still in like 50-50 about it. I'm like, do I really need it? Not do I really need it, but it's like, I don't know. It's just interesting. But yeah, so I basically just have my phone, and I actually have like printed maps of the whole AZT.
Yeah.
So I don't have like a full-on GPS. Honestly, they're really expensive. That's the main thing. And I'm like, for the most part, like it's pretty easy to follow these trails. Like the section of trail that I'm like not certain about is like the southern section, because I haven't done it before. But the parts that I've done, I'm like, okay, I have a sense of like how these trails are supposed to go.
Sure.
AZT specifically is pretty well marked, so yeah.
Yeah, so on the tech side of things, since we're in the pocket there, a spot tracker or a Garmin InReach, for me, that's kind of like it's an insurance policy.
Yeah.
It's a safety insurance policy. I would never, ever do anything without it. It's worth it for me now.
Yeah.
I've been in a couple of precarious situations where the thought has crossed my mind, am I going to need to do that? Press this button? You know? I didn't, because it wasn't that bad, but it can easily turn. And so I like my thing is like, that's a required piece of safety gear. Right.
Yeah.
But to each their own. I do have privacy concerns too in general in life. So that kind of backs up against that a little bit. Yeah. But, so yeah, on the nav, I did the same thing you're talking about here once, where, I used paper maps and I thought I could find the thing. I thought I was good. And I was going from Pine to Flagstaff on the Arizona Trail.
Oh boy.
And this was before it was as developed as it is now.
Yeah.
It's a little more easy at this point, and I got, I don't know, 7 hours into the ride, and I could not find the trail. I couldn't find it. It was like across this creek, and I knew that, but I just like couldn't find it. And I ended up turning around and going back 7 hours to Pine.
Dang.
And then going up some other way to Washington Park, like through a road pathway that I found. And it was a real, I got home and I bought a Garmin E-Trex at that point, and I was like, I'm never doing that again. It was so demoralizing to like have to retrace your step by 8 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds awful.
I was like, I'm never doing that again. So I bought a used Garmin E-Trex for, I don't know, $150 or something on eBay. And the E-Trex is the small model.
Yeah, I've looked at them.
That's battery powered.
Yep.
I still have that one. If you're interested in buying it or having it,
okay,
we'll talk later.
Yeah, we should.
But it's sitting in a box because I have a different navigation now.
Yeah.
It's just sitting there doing nothing. I really had a hard time going away from the E-Trex because it's battery powered, and you can just carry more batteries with you, and the thing lasts forever.
Yeah, and the other ones are all like rechargeable, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm having to bring a power bank on the Colorado Trail Race.
Because of that.
Which annoys me a little bit, but I have the 1040 solar, and it'll last like 4 or 5 days. It's pretty impressive how long it lasts. However, it's one more thing I got to think about.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of mental energy, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the E-Trex, you could just put more batteries in it and keep going.
Yeah.
You know. Now there are downsides with the E-Trex though. At least the one I have. I don't know about the newer models. It doesn't have turn-by-turn navigation. So when you're riding at night, you have to kind of like wake it up every once in a while to make sure you're still on the right track, which isn't that big of a deal. But if you're riding fast at night and you're like trying to wake your GPS up and staring down at it, it's a crash waiting to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's that. When you drop files on there, you have to make sure they're 10,000 points or less on the actual GPS points in the track, because it can't handle more than that. And so what'll happen, and this happens all the time at bikepacking races, people show up at the start and they load up their map and they're like, there's only half of the route on there, because it only loads up like the first 10,000 points and then it just stops.
Oh no.
Yeah, so people that didn't like test anything or check anything get to the start and they're like, what do I do? And you're like, I don't know. Pull out your phone. I don't know. Right?
That's
so
rough.
So that's the one thing you have to, and it's really easy. There's a couple Garmin Basecamp. You can filter the tracks. You can take a track, filter it down to less than 10,000 points. But some of these routes are just so big that it's easily more than 10,000. So yeah, I mean the navigation, the on-screen navigation was such a game changer for my ability to just keep moving. It was amazing. It was probably the one key thing. There's a few key things that would be at the top of the list, I think, and that's one of them. Yeah,
I could totally see like not spending as much time just trying to figure out where you're going, or
you're following the line.
Honestly, I was like, I did look at them, and then I was like, there's other gear that I need to get for this trip beforehand. So it's like also a budget thing of like, okay, can I get it, or is it just, and if I can't, like, I think I could like deal with it. It just might not be as ideal. So.
Well, I might just have a solution for you.
Okay.
Okay. Because it'll change the game for you, for sure. As long as you can deal with the like old 10-year-old tech side of things.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the new ones, I mean, they're pretty nice. You can get a smaller Garmin for, I don't know, probably $300 now.
Yeah.
The solars are like expensive. They're like $600 or $700. Yeah. And I really like had a hard time with that one. I was like, this is my one splurge purchase for the year. But the turn-by-turn's really nice. It has off course warnings, so if you go off, it'll like buzz at you and say, hey, you're not gonna go off course for 4 hours. It's gonna let you know within 5 minutes or 2 minutes sometimes. So that's pretty cool. So and then let's see what else with tech. We got the power bank. So
I had a question about what power bank you're using.
So like I said, I haven't actually used this one yet, but I bought it's called a Nightcore NB 10,000, and it's like carbon fiber or something. It's supposed to be like the lightest power bank you can buy or whatever. I've heard that something to watch out for power banks is make sure it's got like a solid plug. So if you're recharging while you're riding, it
doesn't like undo.
come loose.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to have a good system for. I haven't quite figured that out. I think I can slide it in my. I have some pockets sewn in the side of my top tube bag. Like the dispersed. That's Andrew Stremke. He's makes bags, but he sews like nice different pockets on the inside, and I can slot my battery bank in that, and then just like run the cable out to the top of my Garmin. But I'm just trying to be mindful that it isn't everything in those bags just like move up and down all the time.
Yeah.
So it's just gonna wear that plug out.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to like figure out a way to make sure I minimize that, or I'll probably just charge it when I sleep. So I'm gonna do 20 hours on and 4 hours off for CTR.
Mm-hmm.
That's my plan. So the 4 hours is plenty of time to when I'm sleeping.
Charge it, yeah.
Yeah. To charge that. So I'll probably just charge it at that point. So, but I did do some power. I did do some testing on it to like, I think that's like one of the biggest takeaways is just test everything ahead of time in a race situation. And so I basically went through and I like I was running my Garmin as if I was riding, and then I was had the power bank plugged into it, and I just like logged everything to get a benchmark percentage of okay, how many recharges can I get out of this, and how much does it deplete on each full, can I recharge my Garmin 3 times with this one power bank? So so I did all that testing and everything, and it seemed like, I don't know, I don't want to go into all the numbers, but it seemed like I could get at least a couple charges out of it.
Yeah.
One is all I really need. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I have kind of a goofy question for you.
Oh, yeah.
Do you take like a bike lock with you?
Aha, I love this.
Because I was thinking about it for like resupply. I'm like, okay, well, if I have to leave my bike outside, it would really suck to have my bike stolen.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm just curious. I found a couple like lightweight ones, but I was just curious if you bring one.
Yeah. So.
Or do you carry it? Or do you take it with you into wherever you're resupplying?
Yep.
Like
these are all techniques. Yeah. This is I went down a really deep rabbit hole on this on one of my videos. So what the method so I'm freaked out too. I have a really nice mountain bike.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting it out in front of the gas station in the middle of this like town where there's a bunch of tweakers roaming around, what I mean? And I'm thinking, what can I, so the first layer that I do is I always like try and see if I can take it inside wherever I'm at. If it's like a Circle K or whatever, a Maverick or whatever, and you're there at some weird hours of the night, most people are cool. You're like, hey, can I just take this in? I'll be in for 20 minutes, grab my stuff, and then I'll be out of your hair. I don't want to leave it outside. And that usually 9 times out of 10, the employees give 0 fucks. They like don't even care. They don't even want to be there.
They're like, I don't care what you do.
Yeah. So
as long as you're not getting me in trouble,
right,
like, I don't care.
Right. So as long as you're cool with them, it's probably going to be fine, right? They just don't want to get yelled at by some jerk, complaining about the auto checkout system or whatever, the AI system that they have or whatever, right? So just be cool to them, and that'll solve your problem. But I do bring, if that doesn't happen and there's a place I can't bring it into, so I have an air tag hidden on my bike somewhere. I mean, there's only so many places to hide an air tag. I did a video about whether or not that would actually do anything if your bike gets stolen, like legally what your rights are, whether you can recover a bike. So that's only one layer. That's the first layer of multiple layers of if my bike does get stolen, right? Can I recover the bike or at least track it down with an air tag, right? So I have an air tag on there. What else? I have I do carry a small little lightweight lock. What is the name of it? Oh, I'm escaping the name. It's like a really light orange cable lock.
It's the one that I was looking at. There was one that I was looking at.
People use them for like, you can pull it up. We need a producer.
Yeah.
I need a producer sitting over there.
Here, I'm looking right now.
It's used for like snowboards and stuff on racks and.
Let's see. What was the one that I was looking at? There's an auto lock one, which is one that I was looking at.
Yeah, I forget the name of it.
Anyway, yeah, I was kind of looking. I did like a little bit of research of just like, I mean, I think the super lightweight ones obviously aren't like it'll slow somebody down a little bit.
Yeah, you want it to be a visual deterrent.
Yeah,
That's what I'm looking
really
for.
what it's doing.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, oh, this is gonna be more effort than it's worth.
Exactly. So, yeah. So I bought the brightest colored one I could find intentionally. Like, I just want people to see that it's like a lock and maybe they just move on. Right.
Yeah.
Now, the third layer of this is the Garmin's do have a bike alarm feature on them, which is really cool. So you can
like the GPSs or like
the GPSs. They have an audible alarm, so you can set it. You can like configure it, and so let's say you set it outside the gas station, you can enable the motion alarm on it, and then go inside. So if somebody moves your bike, it'll set an audible alarm off, and if your phone is connected to it, it'll send a message to your phone.
Oh,
your bike's being moved. Yeah, so that's really cool. Third layer. The fourth layer of security that one could have is, and this is pretty bougie, but there are these things called power meters. So you can put power meters on your cranks on your bike, and they basically just like measure the amount of power output you have. So for like high-end racers and stuff, they want to know how much they're putting out consistent power. They now make those with Apple Find My built into them. So it's like having an AirTag. It's like having a second permanent AirTag on your bike.
Interesting.
So if it does get stolen, you can at least like locate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are all different possibilities. I've heard a bunch of stuff on the internet. Like you could take really simple like Occam's razor approach to solving this problem, which is you can like run a zip tie or a piece of Velcro like through your back wheel around your frame. So if somebody tries to ride off with it, it's going to stop them. You can what is the other thing? Like take your chain off, basically. Like not all the way, but like undo it so that somebody can't just like pick it up and pedal off with it.
Yeah.
So there's a variety of stuff like that. But I think like making it less attractive is the best way to avoid theft.
Yeah.
That's about it. You know, there's really I don't think it's a big problem though.
Yeah. Just put your really smelly chamois like on the bike seat or
just
something.
like
inside out.
That's the sixth approach.
Yeah. Just whatever nasty thing you have, just leave it on your bike, you know, so they have to deal with that.
Yeah.
That was funny. So because it was my friend and I on the backpacking trip when our gear got stolen. And actually, if I hadn't had that experience, I probably wouldn't like be thinking about this as much.
Yeah.
But having had that experience, I was like, oh, okay, like this is actually like a thing. But it was so funny because, we had just done this backpacking trip, and my friend was so happy because she had like all of her like dirty clothes, and she was like, yeah, that backpack is super smelly. So like the person who stole it is going to have to deal with that. Like if they want to try and like find stuff of value in there.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
Stealing somebody's backpack, like a backpacker's backpack.
My guess is that like the person was hoping that there was like a wallet or something like that in there. And that honestly was like the biggest bummer about it is like, I'm pretty sure that because our wallets weren't in there. I don't know that he like tried to like resell the gear or anything. My guess is he probably just like threw it in a dumpster somewhere.
Yeah.
So there's like a couple $1,000s worth of gear that's just like in a dumpster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it also ended our trip because we had another backpacking trip planned and we're like, well, can't do that without our backpacks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just an interesting thing.
The other trick you can do, I just remembered, and I've never actually tried this, but I've heard it from a legend, Max Morris. He's like a legend of bikepacking.
Mm-hmm.
The Tucson on the Arizona Trail, the 300, you go through Tucson and there's a spot before you climb up Mount Lemmon where if you go off to the left, there's services there and it's a good resupply point. Tucson is like well known for its bike theft.
Yeah.
It's like really bad, apparently. So what he does is he actually would go to like a Bash's or a grocery store, a Safeway or something like that, and take off his front wheel and put his bike in the cart, in the shopping cart.
And just drive around with it.
And then drive around with it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So I've never actually tried it. I'm sure you would have to have like the right size bike to fit in the shopping cart, but
Yeah.
like solution.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And a smaller version of that is going to be if you do resupply, try to pick a place where they have glass windows so you can at least see your bike.
Yeah.
So if somebody's like eyeballing your bike, it's pretty obvious, I think, when someone's like scoping it out,
Yeah.
So yeah. So bunch of options there. So let's
Cool.
talk about the Portage really quick. The Grand Canyon Portage. You're very ambitious
Yeah.
doing that as part of your
It might be a bad idea, but
So I've never done the Portage.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people who have. I think the rules comprehensively, I put them here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through all of them, but my suggestion is to go on to the Arizona Trail Race website, which is AZT300-800.com. I think that's the website. I'll put it in the description.
Cool.
It's got all the full rules on the Portage there. The one thing I'll point out is it's an absolute privilege that this arrangement has been made with the National Park Service.
Yeah.
And I think it always has the potential of being a finite thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like we cannot take it for granted that we're allowed to port our bikes through the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Originally, Scott Morris, he's kind of the pioneer of this whole thing. He decided he wanted to make and he runs Track Leaders, Scott Morris. He basically envisioned this, like, hey, there's this trail that runs all the way through Arizona. Is there any way we could do this on a bike? Got up to the Grand Canyon crossing and then was like, I think this is possible. We just have to make an arrangement with the right people to make this happen. Yeah. And they freaking made it happen. That's awesome. Which is incredible. Yeah. And it's been tested over the years by people who break the rules. Right. And so there was a group of people 2 or 3 years ago that two or three people that actually rode in on the North Rim half. So rode like their
down
bikes
down
North Kaibab. Yep. And then crossed some people down at the bottom, and then they basically disassembled their bikes and were trying to hide what they were doing and didn't have the right gear to carry their bikes out.
Oh, man.
So they ended up having to make 2 trips up South Rim. Right. But they were taking it was for social media. It was basically like a look what we're doing. It was like a stunt or a prank or something on social media. Right. But so for people that don't know, I didn't say this at the beginning, but like it's like strictly prohibited to have bikes even over the rim.
Yeah.
Like you're not supposed to do it. So the Arizona Trail Race has this arrangement that you can go through it, but you have to completely disassemble your bike and strap it to your backpack and carry it from rim to rim. And that's like a 5,000 foot descent and a 5,000 foot ascent on the other side. And it's part of the Arizona Trail Race, the full race. And the privilege that we have of being able to do that, because it's a very long ways around.
It is a very long ways around.
So
yeah, if you're not from so the drive from Flagstaff to the South Rim is what, like an hour and a half, and the drive from Flagstaff to the North Rim is like 6 hours.
Yeah,
because you have to go all the way up to Marble Canyon, cross at Lee's Ferry, and then go all the way back, and then you're at like at the North Rim.
Yeah.
So it's a long ways around.
Yeah, almost impossible to do it on a bike, or it would completely change the dynamic of the event.
Apparently, they have a shuttle now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I met. Yeah, I know it's not the same, but it was interesting. We ran into this guy at State Line who was this hilarious Australian dude who was just like casually doing sections of the AZT.
Yeah.
And then like biking to Page. It was like 3 p.m. when he got done with the AZT. He's like, yeah, I got to bike over to Page, and like,
that's cool.
That's where I'm leaving from. And he was just so funny. But he had his bike shuttled around.
Right.
Which I didn't realize apparently is now a thing they do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So these these people that were illegally carrying their bikes down the canyon or riding their bikes down the canyon. They got basically thought they were going to get caught, didn't get caught, hiked them out in 2 trips, put all the stuff up on social media, right? And then they were doing I don't know, maybe a year later, they were doing the 24 hours at Old Pueblo or one of the bike races in Tucson. And I think the FBI raided it.
For them?
Because they knew they were going to be there.
Damn.
And arrested them, and they wanted to like make a scene about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I mean, it's federal. It's a federal thing.
Yeah.
You're not messing around.
You don't want to mess with that.
No. And they got busted, man. And it really was a unfortunate circumstance of like how quickly this sort of thing could go away by a couple of dumbass people, you know, that break the rules.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my disclaimer on that. So read all the rules. There's a bunch of rules on the Arizona Trail race website about it, and just respect it. Yeah. I've heard it's one of the hardest things people have ever. Some of the most hardcore badass people have been like, it's by far the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
That's my expectation of it.
So, what kind of bag are you gonna bring? To port.
So I went to SMR and I picked up like an old backpack. And my current plan is to basically rip the back of it off and just use like the straps and the frame to attach to the bike, and leave stuff on the bike. I've looked at a couple different things that people are doing. I've seen things where people basically just put like backpacking straps on the frame and like a hip belt on it.
Yeah.
The benefit that my thought, like, if I don't know, I just need to mess around with it. I was like, it might be nice to have some sort of frame that you're then putting the bike on to give a little bit more support. So that it's not just like all on your shoulders and like your hips.
Yeah.
So that's my current plan.
Yeah. I know a lot.
But I got to mess around with it.
Yeah. Go hike up some stuff up in the hills, you know?
Yeah.
Go test it out. That's what I was doing. I went down, what was it? Eldon Lookout Trail.
Yeah.
I strapped the bag up. I rode up there, disassembled everything, strapped it on.
That's a good idea.
And then went down and learned a lot, you know, throughout that process.
Yeah.
I think one of the more popular backpacks that multiple people have used is the Osprey Stratos. 24 liter, I think.
Okay.
Because it's got that internal frame system.
Yeah, I think the bag that I picked up from SMR it might be an Osprey.
Yeah.
It had like, the reason why I picked it was just that the hip belt and the shoulder straps felt really good.
Mm-hmm.
And just with like that much weight on you and like knowing it's going to be loaded in a weird way that like a normal backpack wouldn't be loaded.
Yeah.
Like I'm honestly less concerned about the weight than just like it being distributed in a weird way on me.
Yeah, it's like...
Yeah. It just like the leverage and all of that, like...
It's so weird. You got handlebars sticking out.
Yeah.
Big wheel sticking out here.
Yeah. I also need to figure out, like, I'm not very tall. So I need to figure out how to set it up in a way that it's not going to be, like, bottoming out on the steps.
Yeah, totally.
Because I just don't have that much clearance.
Totally. I was having that issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was testing it.
So.
Yeah. One thing people have told me, a tip that people have completed it is figure out a way to somehow have access to like an area where you can keep your snacks and stuff.
Yeah.
So if you can do like a side pouch or I don't know, that's something. Like one of those things. Now on the Arizona Trail Race, it is in the rules that you can send something to yourself at the post office in Tucson.
Yep.
So you can pick up a bag there or whatever.
That was my plan, was to send it there so I don't have to carry it.
So you can send hiking poles and shoes if you wanted to.
So I actually wanted to ask you about that because, like, if I were to leave, because there's, like, bear boxes along the trail there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I were to leave something in a bear box and then come back for it, like, after I finished it, is that, like, kosher? Is that, like, a weird thing? Like, if you have, like, trekking poles or something like that, do you just like carry it with you the rest of the way then?
So for the Arizona Trail self-supported race rules, you have to carry everything afterwards.
Yeah.
If you're not doing the race, it does you
That's
can do
true.
whatever you want.
I was just curious.
Yeah, but that would probably be not okay.
Yeah.
That would probably, you'd have to, I think the best thing to do is check with the race directors on stuff like that. If you're doing the race, if you have a question, check with the race directors before you do it, because you'll get relegated and then it could be a thing. I don't know. It just depends on what your goals are. I mean, you could do whatever you want if you're just doing your own deal.
Yeah, for sure. I was just curious. I was just, I mean, it seems like there's very stringent rules around like how you're supposed to do these things. And I mean, I don't.
That's only when you're
really like, I'm not. Well, I'm definitely not going to be setting any records. So.
Right. That's only if you want to be on the table of finishers on the obscure website.
Yeah.
Right. That's all that's for. Like, you can do whatever, other than the Grand Canyon rules.
Yeah.
I mean, those are strict for everyone, right? Other than that, you can do whatever you want. You could have somebody come see you, whatever. It doesn't really matter, because you're just out riding your bike, for you.
Yeah.
But if you want to be stacked up against these other riders on a table of finish times, it has to be fair.
Yeah.
There has to be some sort of fairness outlined. So, and that's the reason for the self-supported rules.
Yeah.
Right. And what's weird is there's no like central organizational body that like manages all these things. It's just people, individual people.
Yeah.
That run them all kind of in their own way but they kind of get ideas from each other. So like Colorado Trail Race, I think it's run by a guy named Hefe Branham. Tour Divide, I don't even know who runs Tour Divide now. And Arizona Trail Race, those are kind of the three big in the Southwest.
Yeah.
That's the Triple Crown, they call it. They're all kind of in the same subset of rules, but you have to make sure you go onto their website, because they might have like one bullet point that's just a little different than the other race's bullet point, like about media or something like that. That was a point of contention recently.
Yeah.
Was media support with Lale Wilcox,
Yep.
About all this. There's a lot of drama about all of this in the community. And so like Arizona Trail Race modified some of its rules in response to this sort of thing, right? Moving forward. So you just check with, if you're going to do the race and you want to be on the table, you're going to check on the website, check with the race directors. That's usually the safest thing. And like go over those in detail, the rules, and just understand them. You're just trying to be fair. I think I'll put a bow on this. I think here they say on the website, the self-supported ethos is designed to provide equal opportunity to all riders. A series of guidelines have been developed to promote self-sufficiency and keep the playing field as level as possible. So the guiding principles of self-support, the guiding principles are self-support and equal opportunity. So ask yourself, am I doing this myself? Am I relying on others? And is this an unfair advantage over other riders who may not live in the United States or have friends or family near the route?
Yeah.
So everything kind of falls under that, right?
Yeah.
Now there is a thing called trail magic. That's a little different. They actually define what trail magic is here.
All right, I'm curious.
Trail magic is the best if you've ever had it. What is trail magic? It's unexpected, unplanned support from a stranger, i.e. a candy bar, Coke, or water. No begging, please. If you know the person or the person who knows about the race and is offering you something, it is not trail magic. Politely turn the offering down or self-relegate. So it's basically when you just, I've had it a couple times.
Yeah.
People that don't know, they're like, what are you doing? Why are you out here?
Yeah.
They're like, you want a candy bar? You're like, okay.
Sure.
But some people are hardcore and they're like, nah, like I'm self-supported. Some people are so hardcore that they don't use the cash boxes on the Arizona Trail Race, which you're really not supposed to be using. They're really there for the hikers.
Yeah.
Because cyclists have the ability to get to water points faster.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I got to pee.
I do too.
Let's take a break.
Sounds
Should have said something earlier. Let's take a break.
Yeah.
So you were asking if in my opinion, the Arizona Trail from Pine to Flagstaff is how fast it is, how technical it is,
Yeah.
and compare it to from Flagstaff to like the canyon.
Yep.
And how I calculate.
And then also like the section from like the North Rim to State Line.
Yeah, so I can't really comment much on that one because I don't really know that area very much.
Okay.
I've only ridden it once, and it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it felt really hard back then, but I don't have any like newish perspective on it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't really know that one, but I think like the section from Pine to Flagstaff, you're pretty much climbing.
Mm-hmm.
You're traversing across. So after you leave Pine, there's new section of Highline, which is pretty fun and flowy. It used to be horrible, but it's now way better. And so you'll traverse across that, and then you got to go up this thing called Washington Park, which is basically like a cut that they made in the Mogollon Rim.
Yep, that's going up where you end up by General Springs cabin, right?
Yep. You got it. Sweet. And that used to be like an old railroad or something that they, some guy in the 1900s like convinced some people to build a railroad to do something. It was a big scam.
They were building all sorts of stuff in the
It turned out to be a big scam, and so he ran off with all the money. But anyway, that's what the cut is. It's like
got it.
They like excavated that area, and so you go up that, and then the stuff from.
Is that like all hike a bike, or you just yeah?
I
assume that section where you're going from the valley like up onto the rim is like just hiking your bike up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Washington Park up is just hike a bike till you get to the top of the rim, and then it's and then I remember it's not too bad, but then as you get like closer to Flagstaff, it becomes pretty chunky and technical, and it's just kind of like. It's all rideable, but it's kind of annoying riding. It's not real flowy. Some sections are, but there are some bits that are just, I don't know, I would say, 6 to 9 mile per hour riding, depending on your skill level.
Yeah.
And so, and that's how you would calculate it. So you're first going to need to benchmark like with yourself, like how fast do I normally go miles per hour on this type of terrain? Medium technical terrain that's still rideable. For me, that's like 6 miles per hour, maybe 5 miles per hour. And then I can figure out from there how long I'm going to be out there, and then I can do all the other planning.
Yeah.
Right. So the bit from Flagstaff on, I think, is way more fun, and I've ridden it many, many times. You were saying that it was like peanut butter mud?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't mud. It was dry.
Yeah,
it was
like
this
weird.
Bizarre crust. And it was, that was on that first bikepacking trip, and it just was like this like 2-inch thick layer of like kind of fluffy soil that had a little bit of a crust to it, and it would just like grab your tires. So even on flat and downhill sections, you couldn't coast. Like you were pedaling the whole day.
Yeah, that's annoying.
It was bizarre. I was like, I don't know what this soil is. And there were no tracks out there, so we were kind of like breaking the trail basically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it kind of cooked us a little bit.
Normally, it's super fast.
Yeah, it's funny. Chris said that he has like, but he I don't think he likes Babbitt Ranch very much. He's like, each time it's like, it's just been kind of a rough experience.
That was the last trip I did with him was on Babbitt Ranch, Craters and Cinder Cones. It's hot.
Yeah, and windy, I think.
Yeah, and desolate. But
like...
I did an ultra run there, so that was way worse.
Oh
than
yeah,
riding.
Oh god, I can't even imagine. Yeah, at least on a bike, you're moving through there more quickly.
Yeah, you got some wind.
It is funny, though, because there's those windmills out there.
Yeah.
And you're biking, and you feel like you've been going, but then the windmills just seem to stay in the same spot, because it's like a whole line of them that just perfectly follows the trail. So it's like this weird optical illusion where you're like, am I biking in place? Like... The windmills don't seem to have, like, moved. They didn't get closer. They're not further away. Like, they're just there.
Right.
Yeah.
Last time I did it, they were building the windmills. It was pretty cool. So you could see, like, them half constructed along the way. And
they're huge.
You could see the ones off in the distance, and they actually got bigger as you got closer. Like, they were building more sections. So, like, in the 3 or 4 hours that it took me to get to the windmill, not only did it get physically closer, obviously, but they had put a new section on the top.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was, but now they're all constructed in
an
optical illusion, like you say, just to mess with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like you're probably going to move slower for that first bit, like because it's generally uphill. Now on the so I'm talking from Payson to Flag. Now on this part from Flag to the South Rim, I think you go kind of down to Boundary, the Kaibab Boundary.
Yep.
Coconino Kaibab Boundary, and then it's kind of a climb up out of there to Tucson.
Yeah, you go up to the Grandview Lookout Tower.
Right.
Which has nothing. Which there's also a Grandview Trail, not at all associated with the actual Grandview Trail. It's in the canyon.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why it's named like that.
Okay.
It also doesn't have a great view, so.
So it's just all.
Yeah,
bullshit.
It's just all wrong. But yeah, you go up to that, and then you go down. But again, when Chris and I did that, it was super windy, so we had the wind against us on the whole downhill section, and we're pedaling on the downhill section.
Yeah.
So
it happens.
But yeah, I think that it's like pretty chill. It's just you're going on the roads, and yeah.
There's a Arizona Endurance Series race. I don't know if you're familiar with the Arizona Endurance Series.
I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a grassroots underground endurance thing, group rides basically.
Mm-hmm.
There's an Arizona Endurance Series race that it's a 100-mile race. It starts in Tucson, and it goes like mostly to Flagstaff, and then turns around and goes back. And
okay.
Part of the race is you have to climb that tower.
Oh yeah.
In the middle of the bike race.
Nice.
You got to climb up to the top and take a picture and go.
I like that.
In your bike shoes.
Yep.
And you're just like sliding around in your clip-ins. You've done 75 miles or whatever at that point, so you're completely like toast.
Yeah.
And you're trying to climb this tower. It's pretty fun, but that was the last time I was at Grandview. But
that sounds super fun.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think maybe like, do you know your miles per hour?
I don't. I mean, I can look at like when I.
Yeah, you look at what you previously rode.
Yeah, let's see. We can look at the Flagstaff Loop Trail.
Yeah, that'll give you a really good benchmark for it, for sure.
Yeah, 65 miles.
Yeah, so 6 miles per hour.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so you can
cool.
probably.
So we can do math.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
Win for the win.
We'll just ignore the fact that we both had to pull our phones out for that.
Oh, I'm definitely cutting that part out.
Okay, good.
That's definitely getting cut. So there you go. So if you layer in some hike-a-bike.
Yeah, and I did some hiking on Rocky Ridge and Forces of Nature.
Right.
Like that was slow for me. Actually, let's see.
So you're pretty fast.
This is the nice thing about, I'm sure the other GPSs also do this, but it's nice to see like how, like what your speed was.
Yeah.
By mileage. Yeah, you can literally see like Rocky Ridge and Forces of Nature on here.
And see the
two little like
down?
flat lines.
Oh yeah, totally. Oh yeah, and it gives your speed profile there too. So you could look at your hike-a-bike times too, which is what, like 2 to 3 miles per hour, maybe something like that.
Yeah, I don't know how my hike-a-bike speed compares to. I could probably pull this data more. Clearly, yeah. I guess my moving speed was 6.5 miles per hour. Average speed 6.2.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. So you can kind of figure that one out.
Yeah.
And then just plot it out. I like to use Ride with GPS.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've gotten used to it for building routes, but also it's good for. I really got used to it for planning and kind of getting things all logged out, and then I'll create a spreadsheet, put like all the waypoints on it,
mm-hmm.
And then put the distance to next in mileage.
Yeah.
And then the time to next after that, the estimated time to next.
That's the piece I don't. I mean, I have like a spreadsheet for water sources.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's kind of the main thing I've done. So, because that's the thing I'm like the most stressed about is just water.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of went through and I like figured out all the water sources and like the distances to each ones. And I also kind of like put in like how reliable they are, because there's somewhere you're like, yeah, it's like a cow tank. It could be dry.
There's a
Who knows?
online tool. There's a whole tool for that now for Arizona Trail.
Yeah, I was on oh shoot, what's the
It's
website
like
called?
Far Out or something?
Yeah, Far Out.
Yeah.
Yep. I was looking at that and referencing like
Okay.
yeah, and like people post on there. I was
Yep.
looking at the time of year for like when I'm probably gonna have to do this trip. Unfortunately, it's probably gonna be pretty hot. Because I think it'll have to be like first week of September, which could be a little toasty. But I'm out of town like later in September and October, so
Yeah.
and I'd rather have
Right.
more daylight, I think, than go in November. Like I've done some trips in November, like backpacking trips, and it's kind of brutal to have so much night, like having the days be so short.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Oh.
totally. What about water treatment? What are you doing for water treatment right now?
So I have a Sawyer Mini. That's what I've been using. I also bring treatment tablets because I've had, on backpacking trips, I've had that experience of the filter clogging and just like there's nothing you can do, and you're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I don't want to sit here for hours like filtering my water, so.
Is it like aqua tabs?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So my friend Francis told me about Aqua Mira,
Yeah, that's what I've used. Yeah.
which is like a liquid that you
Mhm.
mix. So that
I've
was
used I've used the 2 tabs
uh-huh.
before, like the 2-part one.
Uh-huh.
And also Aquamira. I've used both.
Yeah, I haven't used any of that. I have the tabs, but I've never actually used it. It's just backup.
Yeah.
Is there a taste thing with those, or?
I mean, there's maybe a little bit. So the 2-part has iodine in it, I believe.
Okay.
I don't remember. So it tends to like the water like changes colors, which is kind of interesting. But I don't really notice a taste. I mean, yeah. I think the only thing is like if you're always drinking treated water, it can be kind of hard on your like body. So like maybe don't want to do that for a whole trip, but like as a backup, it's really good.
Yeah.
And I mean, I dig the filter. It's just in Arizona, we have like some silty ass water. So it's like if you're filtering from a river, there's a pretty high likelihood that there's going to be a lot of silt content in there, and it can clog a filter. Granted, I've had that experience more with like the gravity filters than with like, I haven't really used a squeeze filter like the Mini in that environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just have had enough filters clog that it's worth it to have a backup.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's really light too. It's like this tiny little bottle, and you're like, okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, the Sawyer I've had mixed. The bags on the Sawyers I hate.
Yeah, I actually got a different bag for like squeezing. I got a
Okay.
CNOC flask.
And that
for that.
connects up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They actually make, and I can't claim credit for that. Chris was the one who like kind of turned me onto those. But they make them with like the same threads. They'll actually on the website will tell you what the thread is, so you can figure out if it'll hook up to your filter or not.
The thread pitch.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because I do know that the smart water bottles that you can buy at the gas stations have the same thread pitch as the Sawyers.
Yeah.
So I would carry that or use that as a backup. But I went away from the Sawyer. It's all the same. Sawyer, Katadyn, Be Free, and then Solomon has an XA filter.
I've used the Katadyns a lot for like river trips for filtering.
Okay. Yeah.
Like the big bags.
Okay. Yeah, because the Sawyer is like closed,
Mm-hmm.
and the Katadyn is an open.
Yeah.
So you can clean it out.
Yeah.
In the water without having to do a back flush system. And same with the Solomon. Solomon, the XA, it's a little bit lesser known, but it actually is the best flow rate out of all three of those.
Oh, cool.
On some of the testing that I've seen. And it works pretty well. Those all work pretty well, it seems. But yeah, the clogging, that's an issue. So what about like rain gear? I know we're in Arizona, but do you have a pretty good solid rain gear setup from backpacking?
I do not.
Okay, you got an Arizona rain kit.
Yeah, I have. I mean, my go-to layer if I'm like, oh, there might be some weather, is my Houdini, which I know is not waterproof.
Yeah, that's a gamble.
It is, but it's. I mean, the thing is, a lot of times here, it's like it'll rain for like a little bit, and then it dries out, and like everything dries out super quick.
Sure.
So it's like just enough. I do have like a light, like well, it's not mine, but I can borrow a lightweight like Gore-Tex Marmot jacket, which is nice. But I don't have any rain pants, and I do want to get a pair of rain pants. Honestly, more for commuting than for anything else.
Yeah.
Because I was like riding my bike like last year to work, and there were several days where I just got soaked, like just totally drenched, and I was like, it would be really nice to have a pair of lightweight rain pants to just throw on.
Yeah.
I was looking at, there's a company, they have like a super lightweight rain jacket, and they also have rain pants. Starts with an M. I forgot what it is. That I want to get. That seemed like very lightweight and minimal.
Yeah.
Because it's, especially in Arizona, it kind of, it's not going to rain all day typically. So it's not really worth it to have like heavier rain gear.
Right.
I think I'd much rather have like a really lightweight setup that I'm not going to be like mad about if I brought it with and don't use it.
Right. Yeah. Well, in rain pants on a bike,
Yeah.
it's like a whole, like, I hate it.
I think I'd rather just like wear shorts or something
Yeah.
and just yeah.
Yeah. So do you wear chamois shorts?
Yeah, I
Like
have
spandex type?
Yeah, I have a chamois. And then I've been riding in the like Patagonia Dirtcraft pants, which I love.
Okay.
Honestly, they're like my new favorite hiking. Like I did this climb in Yosemite, like the multi-pitch, and that they were awesome for that too. They're just really light, they're stretchy. They've got like little vent holes, which is really nice. And like the waist fits really well, like it doesn't slide down, so I'm stoked about those.
Yeah.
I also have the shorts, but it's kind of nice not to have to like sunscreen your legs and stuff for like a longer trip.
Yeah. Totally.
So,
yeah. Yeah, the rain gear, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes I just like sweat. I just wet it out from the inside.
Yeah, it's not
when I'm riding.
Yeah, you're like it's like if it's raining all day and it's cold, that's one thing.
Totally.
But like monsoon season, I don't know. I usually just if I'm doing stuff outside, I'm like, I'll just wear swim shorts and they'll get wet and then they'll dry.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Totally. Yeah, I think that a good rain jacket, that was high on my list for a Colorado trail race.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Different scenario.
Yeah.
Like a nice, I think I got a Montbell.
Montbell, it must be the same one. Maybe is it really lightweight and like?
Yeah, they make two that are like the tip of the spear on weight. There's a Versalight.
Yeah,
and a Torrent Flyer. I think
I was looking at the Versalight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the lightest.
Yeah.
Ultralight. It has Gore wind stopper.
Mm-hmm. Which is actually waterproof.
Up to a certain
It is actually it's waterproof. The thing is that with that you don't like seam tape it, so it's not as waterproof as like actual Gore-Tex.
Oh,
but it's just a different category.
Right.
The fabric itself is actually waterproof.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that seemed, the Montbell stuff seems pretty legit.
Yeah, it's just Gore has these weird standards around like what tags you're allowed to put on stuff.
Oh.
And it's I don't entirely understand how all the standards work because they're a little mysterious about it. They're just like, yeah, that's this thing or this thing, and you're like, okay, but why? They're like, we can't tell you, and you're like, okay, sweet.
Oh, well.
But yeah, typically there's certain fabrics that you can get like the Gore-Tex label on, but they have to be seam taped. And then there's other fabrics that they put windstopper on, or like Infinium. And they're still waterproof, but they're not required to be seam taped. So, like, by their standards, it's not actually waterproof.
I see. Yeah, that's the Versalight then.
Yeah.
That's the one. That's what Andrew Strimke...
And it's, like, maybe less durable, so I think that might be part of it, too. Like, it might be a lighter fabric or have a different backer on it. So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll see how it works out. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to test it.
Yeah.
I hate the rain. I just like close up and put my headphones in and just
in it,
get through it, you know.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. The upside is there's water everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's just something I'm not quite used to. Do you run flat pedals or
Yes.
flats?
I have flats. Yeah, I have the 1-Up pedals, the composite
composite
ones.
ones.
Wow,
I just
struggle with
bought
that
those.
word. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah,
I've been putting lots of holes in my shins with them, so that's fun. Yeah, like smash.
So they're
my
real
shin.
sticky.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're sharp.
What kind of shoes?
I have the Physic. Is it the Tensor Flats? I think. I have bunions, so I was trying to find. It took me a while to find shoes that were like wide enough and had like, for me, shoes that have like that wedge toe shape are really painful. And the Physics are like more straight, like have more like they're still pretty narrow, but that edge like by your big toe is more of that ultra shape where it's straight. And I've been really happy with them. They have like a sort of built-in ankle guard gaiter, which is pretty nice. Like it kind of comes up on your over your ankle.
Yeah.
And it's a tight fit. And I like the way that your it like covers up the laces. So I've been really happy with them.
Nice.
And they do actually have a version for clip-ins.
Oh, really? Yeah,
So
with the
both.
SPDs.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so I actually just went from SPDs to flats.
Yeah.
For CTR. Specifically, Francis convinced me of, like, there's so much hiking that it's worth it.
Yeah.
I've done one Arizona Trail 300 in flats and one in SPDs. And on the SPDs, I wore through the toe box of the shoe.
Yeah.
I think from hiking.
Didn't you tell us about that?
Yes.
I think that was, when you came to Cotulla. Yep.
Yeah, I wore, that was on the last round I did last October.
Yeah.
Just, I always wear through the left side of my toe faster than any other part of the shoe. It's just something to do with the way I hike.
Yeah.
Or the side I'm on or whatever. Or I put more friction on that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wore through it at like, I don't know, somewhere before Mount Lemmon.
Whoops.
Yeah. And I had the Cotulla Gators and I was like, I'm not getting rocks in my shoes.
They're coming in the front.
Coming in the front, coming in the toe. It really sucked for many miles. Because every time I would get off and hike, it would just fill up with rocks and I'd have to take the shoe off, dump it out.
Dang.
And then eventually I've told the story a few times, but I just ended up taking my sun leg off and shoving it in the toe box.
Yep.
And just
stuffing
it.
Yeah.
So that nothing could get up in it. And
hey, if it works.
It worked. Yeah. Yeah, it worked. You do what you can, but so I'm doing. Let's see.
Those were the 510s.
Adidas 510 Trail Cross, which I really liked. I'm not trying to shit on Adidas 510. I just bought a brand new pair of them. I used them for way too long, and I got cheap, and I used them in like Stagecoach 400, Iceland. I did a bunch of trips on them.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, I'm just looking at them. I'm like, I have to.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm such a visual person. I'm like, I gotta see it.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember. Yeah, and so it was like peeling. The sole is just peeling away on the front.
Yeah, so something to do with that, because the SPDs have that carbon insert to keep it rigid.
Okay. So it's like a hard point.
Yep. The hard point wears through the flexible point on the toe.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's going to happen on the flats the same way or not. We'll see.
What I like about the Physics is they have like the rubber. They have pretty thick rubber that wraps up around the toe.
Ah.
So it's actually like, I'll just pull them up real quick. I've been really happy with them, honestly. Yeah, you can kind of see how it like comes up around the toe.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's nice. So that's kind of like double reinforced there in the toe.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I've been stoked with them. I mean, there's still like my feet are just kind of like a challenge. They just don't like being in shoes.
That's
I think if I could, I would wear sandals all the time.
Yeah.
But it's okay. But the Physics haven't worked pretty well. I actually ended up, when I got them, I had ordered both the what are the like 510 flat, or the 510 like pro, the ones that Chris has. Do you know which ones I'm talking about?
Free Riders?
The Free Rider, it's Free Rider Pros.
Yeah, Free Rider Pros. Yeah.
I had those, and I had ordered the Physics, and I was like, I'm gonna try them on and see which ones feel better. and the toe box felt better on the physics. So
Yeah.
that's what I
The 510s are narrow.
They
the trail
and
crosses are narrow.
The toe is like small.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I have the
more
same
room.
problem with running shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really into the open toe box.
Yeah.
Let's see, what did I have before? Throw out a couple names. Hoka's are what I moved to. The zero drop shoe that's famous for being zero drop. We're having a name.
Yeah, we're struggling with names
we need
today.
a producer. We need a producer.
We need to like phone a friend.
Ultras.
Yeah.
So Ultras have a super wide toe box, and I
That's
really
what
enjoyed that.
I've been using the Ultra, just the Lone Peaks for a while, but I also. Okay, now we're getting like real into all of my foot problems, but
all right,
my feet
third
are
segment.
Like, yeah, my feet are like a full shoe size different, and so I've like
from foot to foot.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So I've finally been like, okay, I think I need to just buy 2 different shoe sizes, because the last long day hike I did in the canyon, I wore through a pair of socks. Wow. Because my toe was like jamming up against the front.
Yeah.
Like the whole day.
Wow.
But it's like it's enough that if I do size up to like the big foot, then the small foot is just like swimming.
Yeah.
But I also really don't want to buy 2 pairs of shoes.
Yeah, can't you like contact somebody?
I don't know. I need to reach out to them and just see. Like, it'd be awesome if I could get like, I don't know if they have like defective shoe, like or something where there's like a visual defect or yeah. Anyway,
it's so funny how those, like, nobody thinks about those little things. I'm pretty sure my left leg is shorter than my right leg, and it's created some hip issues for me.
Yeah.
Over time riding.
Interesting.
That I've been dealing with since like 2019.
Huh.
I just went to a different chiropractor to try and get some more answers on how to mitigate it a few days ago. But it's like, it overextends on the left side.
Oh, interesting.
So I have to run my seat in a certain position where it feels like it's too short on the right side.
Yeah.
You know, but it is what it is. That's human bodies, right?
Yep.
We're not perfect.
Not symmetrical.
No.
Yeah. Incidentally, if there is anybody who has bunions, like one of the biggest things that I found that's helped is wearing toe socks.
Okay.
Because it allows your feet to like spread a little bit more.
Yeah.
And like your feet being kind of squished together, at least in my experience, is what makes it like the most uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And actually, Bedrock Sandals partnered with Injinji to make like toe socks where it's like the tabby style, like just the big toe. So if you don't want to deal with having to like get your toes into like all the little toe corrals.
Yes.
The Bedrock ones are great. I have a lot of them.
It's a good call.
So
that drives me nuts.
Yeah, I
like,
have some
situation.
of the normal toe socks, and I'm like, if I put them on at the beginning of the day and I don't have to take them off until the end of the day, I'm stoked. But if I have to like, like if I go to the climbing gym and I take them off and then I have to put them back on, I'm like sitting there like swearing, like pulling the little toes out. And it's just, it's kind of a pain. The Bedrock and Gingy socks are great.
I'll have to recommend that to my wife because she just finished Cocodona and she swears by the Injinji socks. But try putting those things on 200 miles in when her feet are swollen. We can barely. I'm like, you do this. I was like,
oh, no.
You just deal with this because I am not like. The little toes and then her toes are like swollen to twice the size of normal, and and her feet are like hypersensitive also. And I'm just like, I'll put your gator on, but like you got to deal with the rest of this stuff. You signed up for this.
Yeah.
So that's a good tip there. Well, I think we've pretty much covered pretty much everything that I had from your original list of stuff. I do have some. Well, can you tell me about this since I have you here?
Sure.
Can you tell me about this Dory project that you did? So an aspiring carpenter to make a Dory?
Yeah, well, so that was my COVID project. I guess a little context if people don't know what the word Dory means.
Yeah.
It's a wooden whitewater boat. that's like a plywood boat. And in 2021, no, 2020, I was on a river trip with my friend who had built a dory up on the Salmon River. And he was kind enough to let me row it for a day. And they're just incredible boats to row. I mean, they are like super sensitive and responsive to the water. Something about the wood as opposed to like an inflated rubber boat, you feel the water so much more like directly through the hull of the boat. I think it's kind of similar, like if you've paddled like an IK and like compare that to paddling a hardshell kayak, it's like a similar difference in like the sensitivity that you have. And they're also just so damn pretty. I mean, they're just like beautiful boats.
Yeah.
And so I was like so stoked rowing that thing. And I was like, this is awesome. He's like, well, you should build one. And I didn't know any better, so I was like, sure, I'll build I'll build a boat. And then before I knew it, I was like in it. I was like in this boat building project. And it was my first like proper woodworking project. So there's a lot of learning that happened.
Yeah.
But it was a really fun process, and honestly, like the complexity of like the carpentry skills required kind of increases as you go along. So it actually was a really great project to learn on because it starts out relatively simple, and then it just kind of builds and builds.
Interesting.
So yeah,
That's cool.
That was my journey with that.
So the first time I didn't know what a dory was up until 3 months ago. I interviewed Chris Thornley from Squirrels Nut Butter.
Yeah, he just got one.
Yeah. So his plan is to solo it down the Grand Canyon.
Yep.
And his story was super cool and inspirational, and he kind of blew my mind a little bit with the dory.
They're cool.
Project. So yeah, there's this weird connection with it, you know?
Yeah, it just, I think part of it, this was actually what my talk was about in Yosemite.
Oh, cool.
And I was like thinking about it a lot. And I think a big part of it is that like there's something about being on the water and like this incredible outdoor space and something that you've built that connects you both more to the outdoor space. Like the material set is just like a lot more connected to the natural world because it is mostly wood.
Yeah.
And I think it also connects you to like, you feel so much closer to previous generations of people that have gone down the river in boats that they built. And you just have this like experience of like closeness to that in a way that you really don't with like a rubber raft.
Yeah.
And it's cool. Yeah. And the shape of them, like the lines that you have on the boats are like much more natural and like feel like they fit into the place that you're in. So, yeah.
Interesting. That's cool.
Very cool.
Nice. I do have rapid fire questions that I end every podcast with. Let me pull them up really quick. I forgot to print them out. All right. So some of this stuff might pertain to bike packing. Some of it might pertain to all of your experiences in the outdoors. What's your favorite thing to eat while you're riding or racing or backpacking?
I feel like sour. Yeah, I saw I got distracted by the bubbles. Sour gummy worms for sure.
Yeah.
They're great.
Nice. What about after you're done, when you get back to civilization, post race or ride?
I always have, there's 2 things that I usually crave. Well, 3. Okay. Ice cream, if it's hot. If it's a hot day, I like find myself fantasizing about ice cream at some point during the day. A burger and fries always sounds great.
Yeah.
And then a very cold beer.
Yeah. I think I spent 5 days in the Prairie River, and when I came out, doing the Prairie River Slot Canyon hike, and when I came out, I believe I had all three of those things.
I mean, it's like the trifecta. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Always like the greasy food, something cold, and refreshing.
What's your spirit animal?
I would say a platypus.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I love it.
Doesn't really know what it wants to be, so it does all these different things.
Oh, that's amazing. What do you think is your backcountry or endurance superpower?
Probably uphill. Just doing uphill.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's your jam.
that is my jam. I'm usually about as fast uphill as I am downhill.
Wow.
I just like, yeah.
Is there something about like the elevated heart rate, or just like putting your head down and powering through something?
I'm usually not like trying that hard. Or well, I'm trying hard, but I'm not like I usually try to hike in a way that I can like breathe easily and like I mean, if I can like eat and be hiking, like that's like the ideal pace. For
Yeah.
biking, it's a little different. Like you just can't at a certain point. You're like, no, we're just here breathing hard and like trying to pedal up the hill.
Yeah.
But I feel like I just get into a rhythm with it, and I can just like do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I love going up too.
Yeah.
I just
Until it gets really technical, and then I'm like flopping all over the place. But
Yeah, I love going up with a heavy backpack on.
Yeah.
Like going up switchbacks and just like hammering it out and putting your head down and I feel you on that.
I also feel like it's way less hard on your body than like downhill.
Oh yeah.
At least in hiking, man. I was noticing that in Yosemite. I was like, man, hiking downhill is so much harder on your body.
Yeah.
Like I did Half Dome, and the hardest section of the whole day was like the last mile of steep downhill on pavement. I was like, my knees hurt so bad.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that'll be an interesting canyon portage then for you.
Yeah, I think doing downhill at the beginning of the day, maybe it's just that I've hiked so many canyons.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like doing downhill at the beginning of the day and uphill at the end feels better than starting with the uphill and then having to do downhill when you're tired.
Totally. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Whatever makes you feel like you can accomplish it though.
Yeah. That's what I keep telling myself,
right, Right. Yeah, yeah. What's your worst crash or fall you've had?
Oh man. I don't know that I've had any like really bad.
Have you had any close calls like climbing?
Yeah, I mean I've had some like weird falls climbing, but I'm pretty averse to like high consequence falls and stuff. I mean I've definitely backflopped a few times because I do a lot of like horizontal roof climbing, where like if you come off you just kind of like backsplat. Yeah.
So like you're on a.
Yeah, so you're like hanging and like your back is like parallel to the ground.
Whoa.
So I had this one climb that I was working on where I was just like determined to get it, and I went out there like on my own to climb it, and I only had 2 crash pads, and so I'd set them up so I would like fall off and like hit the ground and then roll onto the crash pad, which was the best way I could protect it for like the last bit.
Yeah.
So I took some kind of wild falls off of that. And then I did actually have a bike ride like for my birthday last year where I was trying to do like a lot of like miles and I only had like a couple hours. And so I got to the end and I was just like whipping on this single track. And I don't know, I think I had like a pedal strike, but I like ate it. And luckily I didn't really get hurt. I was really glad to be wearing a helmet though, because I did hit my head like on a rock.
Yeah.
And that's
scary.
A little exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, we were going a little too fast there. On like casual single track that I've done many times before.
That's where it gets you.
How it happens, right?
That's where it gets you. Yeah, I was just talking to Austin from Cotulla, and we were talking about Cocodona, and this was on the podcast we did with Carrie and Austin.
Yeah.
And he hurt himself painting his house.
Oh,
he
nice.
like rolled his ankle.
Sweet.
Falling like coming off a ladder weird or something.
Yeah.
It's like how many steps did he take on Cocodona?
Yeah.
And then it's always when you're comfortable.
I guess I could say too, like my worst energy crash was actually this spring in the canyon, and I didn't have enough food. And I crashed so hard. Like I was like crawling out of the canyon.
Yeah.
Like the last 2 miles were the longest 2 miles of my life. It was so slow.
Do you think
it was ridiculous?
Would you say that running out of food or water is worse? Like
food.
Yeah?
Yeah. I've had a similar day in the canyon where I was really low on water. And and I felt worse running out of food.
Wow.
It was really interesting. It was one of those things where we left really early. Like, we left Flag at like 3 a.m. and I forgot to pack breakfast. So my lunch became my breakfast.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, I just didn't have enough food. And I kind of had that realization like halfway through the day of like, oh, I still have like, 14 miles to go. And I'm like down to like my last like goo packet. And so I was like, all right, well, we'll go halfway and then we'll like eat that. And then we're just going to have to like do the rest.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because I could feel myself slowing down. I ate the goo, felt great. I was like cruising. And then I could feel it just like, it was like I could feel the moment that like my body burned through that. And then it was just like, mega hit a wall.
It's pretty incredible how that becomes so, let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, comes to the surface. Like that feeling. I've done that with, I do maple syrup for, I've been experimenting with maple syrup. There's a company called Embark Energy. And
I think I saw them at a trade show.
Oh, really?
I believe so.
Yeah.
At TRE.
I got connected to them through another Bikepacker, and I tried it, and it was like, you can feel it.
It's like immediate. Yeah.
You can feel it when your muscles are taxed. You can feel it going in, and then you can feel it the other way. When
you're like, oh, okay. All right. Well, that was nice. It's done now. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the problem with sugar.
Yeah.
It doesn't stick around.
Yep.
Who inspires you?
Oh gosh, there's so many people that inspire me. I feel like in Flag, like there's so many badass people doing stuff where you're like, wow.
Yeah,
like,
they're kind of surrounded by legends around here, aren't we?
Yeah. It's hard. I don't know that I have like a very like specific person that I'm inspired by, but I feel like I'm frequently inspired by like different people around me doing super cool stuff. Like recently, like just, you mentioned Austin doing Cocodona and like seeing that whole thing. And I think having somebody who you work with do something like that makes it feel like, oh, like this is actually something that like can be done. Whereas it's like, if it's like somebody you're like, oh, I know this name of this person who's doing this crazy stuff. And it feels like much more removed and like they're in like a totally different world from you. Yeah. So when it's like somebody you're like, no, I work with this person every day, and like they just went out and did this like crazy physical feat, it makes it feel like a lot more like possible to do stuff that really pushes you. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and you're surrounding yourself with these people. Yeah. And then sometimes too, you're like, this is crazy. Like, I don't know. It's the scale of like what being athletic is so different in Flag than it is like other places. Totally. Like, I don't really think of myself as a particularly athletic person. And then like you go other places and people are like, wow, you're so athletic. It's like, I don't really think so. Right. Right. Yeah. It's like not by Flagstaff standards. That's for sure. That's the problem, is the scale we're at, right? The mecca we're in of endurance athletes. I mean, I got a Nike sponsored Olympic runner a few doors down from me, and you like see her run by the house and you're like, what is happening? Yeah. Just, it's cool. It's really cool. It's cool to be in this environment. And I think there's pockets in other places, but Arizona's really seemed to blow up for that. I mean, there's just so many outdoor spaces. Yeah. And also the terrain is like freaking brutal. Mm-hmm. So like if you want to like challenge yourself, then like here we have the elevation too. Mm-hmm. And you have the desert. Yeah. You have Sedona 45 minutes an hour away. Yeah. So you have the access to year-round elevation and then year-round activity. Yeah. That's unique. Like you don't get that there's a few sister cities like Boulder and that I just I don't know if they have that kind of access. Yeah, I mean, for climbing, you can climb here like year round, which is pretty unique. Yeah. There's not a lot of places where you can climb year round. Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool. You listen to a lot of podcasts, and if you do you have a favorite? I do. I listen to a lot of like Radiolab and Throughline. Those are like two of my favorites. I love Radiolab. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good shit.
Been a long time Radiolab listener.
Yeah. I've recently been listening to Jadam Rod did the Dolly Parton's America podcast.
Oh, okay.
Which is what I was listening to on my way to and from Yosemite.
Okay.
Many hours of driving, you know. It was really good. It was cool. So I've been enjoying that.
Yeah, Jad did a live show one time in Flagstaff.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, at NAU.
That's cool.
It was like a Radiolab live show.
That's
that
super
they did.
cool.
Yeah, it was so cool to see.
Yeah.
Because he's retired from Radiolab now,
yeah,
right?
he is.
Yeah,
yep.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. What's the worst water source you've ever drank from?
Ooh, I think probably the worst was in the canyon, filtering out of Lone Tree, which has these potholes, and they were pretty scummy. Like, they were scummy enough that we were pre-filtering it through a pair of clean underwear from someone on the trip to get, like, the floaties out.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, it was definitely that water. It's like, well, it's still green, like bright green after you filter it.
Yeah.
But it tasted all right, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That was probably the worst.
Nice.
That and the salt and the LCR.
Little Colorado River?
Yeah.
Okay.
You filter that and it still tastes like
concrete?
Yeah. I killed a filter on that trip.
Yeah. So you can, like, if you have the tabs or the liquid, can you drink that okay? Like, does it give you, like, I don't know, problems digestively? I think
it would probably give you digestive problems.
Yeah.
Even filtered, like, I think you can drink that water for, like, a day.
Mm-hmm.
But we really tried to only use it to cook because...
Kidney stones?
Yeah, it's just, like, it's not good.
Yeah.
Because filters only do so much.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And lastly, one piece of advice you'd give to any new bikepackers or endurance athletes?
Oh, man, I had one. I'm trying to remember what it was because I was like, this is the, like, thing that I wish I knew. Think the big thing is, like, the chamois situation for a longer day ride. Like, trying to work that out, which I'm still learning. And, yeah, also the timer thing with food. That's actually been a huge one for me. It's just, like, if you struggle with eating during the day, like, setting a timer for, like, an hour and just, like, stopping and doing that, like, is really good. Because it's really easy, like, if you get stoked to just keep going and then you, like, hit a wall before you know it.
Well, then 3 hours go by.
Yeah.
4 hours go by. And
and you're like, I feel terrible.
Yeah, and I'm behind.
And you can't catch up.
Yeah.
So,
totally.
yeah. I think that was a big one.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, we better wrap this up before the
Sweet.
birthday party gets started across the street. So sorry, folks, if you're listening. We're in a public park and there's a birthday party happening behind the camera here, and they're about to sing happy birthday. So
is that what's happening?
I think
so. You
so.
go steal their cake?
Yeah, we're gonna go steal some cake. Let's do some promotion for you first, really quick. So your Instagram art page is here. It is.
Yeah.
Happy birthday song. Talweg. It's your handle is TALWEG_art.
Yep. Yeah.
So what kind of stuff do you do there?
It's a mix of, like, I have some painting, I have some photography stuff on there, I guess, and just kind of like abstract, kind of digital art type stuff.
Yeah.
I tend to lean a bit more into, like, abstract things. So, yeah. I'm posting all of that on Talweg. And then, yeah.
Cool. And your personal Instagram at Nico Noma?
Noam, yep. Design.
NICONOAM design?
Yep.
Cool. And you work at Cotulla?
We do. Yeah.
So shout out Cotulla as always.
Yep. We love Cotulla. We had a fun little bouldering day yesterday with everyone.
Right on.
Out at the draw, which was pretty fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. All right, Nico. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.